Good evening and welcome to another exciting meeting of the Water and Sewer Commission. Today is June 4th, not 2018. It's approximately 6:32 or 3 p.m. I must ask first if there's anyone here for public forum. Unless someone's hiding under a chair, I don't see anybody. So we'll continue right on as usual to reading the warrants, and we ask Mr. Jennings to do that, please.
Sure. Warrants for review and signature, we have the commissioner's salaries, $400. Cosgrove and Blatt, March 2018 services, $621. Osterman, $131.80. Viola, March 2018 energy services, $660. Viola, 5E/6W lab testing in March, $184. LaForte Electric, 126 Osgood Road, $560. WB Mason nameplate, $10.19. Franklin Electric, 2 grinder pumps for Burlingame Construction, $6,016. EJP meter wire, $304.52. EJP 6 meters, $905.94. EJP meter connectors, $213.13. Beta services, 3/31/18 through 4/27/18 through grant funding, $7,037.56.
First, I would ask you to phrase that in form of a motion. You just read these without saying. I'd like to
Okay.
make a motion.
But I'd like to make a motion that the commission accept the total of $17,044.14
Okay, do I
of
have
the
a,
warrants for review.
do I have a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion on these motions?
Okay, I just looking this over here, the grinder pumps for the Burlingame construction, what are those grinder pumps for?
2 new residential connections. One's on Old Worcester Road, one's on Morton Station Road.
Okay, so,
The way the property lays out, you can't gravity feed into the gravity line in the road, so they're gonna have to pump to it.
okay, and so we're paying for the pumps?
No, they paid us. We purchased them, yes, and they're
Okay,
paying us when
set
they
off.
pick them up.
Perfect,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Not hearing any, I'll ask, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. And do you have any minutes, sir?
Sorry, people. There we go.
Are they in this packet?
They're in both.
So you don't have to
Both?
read them, you just make a
Okay.
motion to,
You guys told me I had to make a motion to accept these, not the minutes, see?
well, the minutes are
Have a
next.
motion.
I'm learning. All right, make a motion, we accept the minutes of May 7th, 2018.
Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
Any discussion on that motion?
Let me just take a quick peek here, I don't think I read all these, but I don't think there's anything,
This is on May 7th,
Yes,
is our last meeting? Yeah.
it's my
No.
first, our last.
That's right, yeah.
I'm
No
all
further,
set.
you're all set? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. And unanimous again.
So there's 3 things there you have to sign.
Yep.
Yeah, that's one.
Oh, I should have done ladies first.
No, you don't have to. But thank you.
wait until I get a pile. Sure. Pile, if you don't mind.
It's easier to sign that way.
We're efficient.
You all set?
I think I'm all set.
All right, well, our first guest tonight is McClure Engineering, and they are not here yet. So we'll proceed on. The water rate study, Peter, is that gonna be represented by you or by Beta?
Myself.
Something, okay, well, then you can hit that, we're jumping ahead to new business.
So I sent out 4 proposals to complete the water rate study that we've discussed in the past. Seeing that's probably the last item we need to figure out in our discussion, or the last item we need to have the discussion of whether or not to go consecutive, is to make sure that we'll be financially feasible if we do decide to do that. I sent out 4 requests for proposals. You'll see in the memorandum I have attached. Ty and Bond did not submit one. They actually came out, he met with me, seemed interested, but they did not end up submitting a proposal. Beta was the highest at $19,500. Pioneer Consulting Group was second low bidder at $15,000, and he also had a bid alternate. And the Abrahams Group was low bidder at $12,000. The proposals were due last Wednesday, so that I could get them in time to have them on the agenda for tonight. Unfortunately, that didn't leave enough time to make sure that someone, either Mark or Matt from the Abrahams Group, could come to our meeting, so they weren't able to attend tonight. I do have their proposal attached for your review, as well as the other 2 bidders. We do have funding for this water rate study in a grant. The finance director confirmed that there is money there to fund this water rate study, so it's up to you guys. If you want to review the proposal, I can ask someone from the Abrahams Group to be at your next meeting, or if you're comfortable enough with it and you want to just keep things rolling, I can set up the first meeting with them and get the ball rolling if you approve this, and approve the funding from the grant money that's available based on the discussion from the finance director, and I'll get it moving and still have them to try and come in front of you at your next meeting to give you an update of where we are.
So the thought was to go with the low bidder.
Yes, I believe,
Any opposition to that thought?
only if you're not comfortable with him, and I believe Mark Abrahams has been intimately involved with the town and
He has, yeah.
working with this board, working with the assessors, working with quite a different number of people, and I think he's definitely an esteemed colleague in his field, and I think he's very well capable of doing the study that we're looking for him to do.
Okay.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. Is this the father or the son?
They're working together,
Okay,
so I believe we'd probably end up working with both of them.
okay. Yeah, and Peter, you've read through this
Yes.
completely. What are they asking, if anything, for us to either provide or do for them?
We haven't had that initial meeting. They're asking,
But it's not in the contract.
at this time, as far as how much information to give them, and they're looking to have access to any information that we have, and for us to help them with that.
Okay, I'm just recalling in another instance that we ended up having with someone who was doing some study work for us, and they wanted access to, in fact, it was access to reports and also access to our engineer. And if that our engineer would also provide lists of things, and it ended up getting quite involved
Okay.
in additional expense. But none of that appears to be here.
They do ask, all 3 of them ask for assistance with information that might be required, or getting them, capital improvement plan and all that stuff.
Right, which,
I believe, again, in working with Beta and working with the Abrahams Group previously, I think we should be able to work with them and get the information they need to do a comprehensive study, without incurring additional costs over
that's what I wanted to hear. Okay,
that.
thank you.
That's my hope, that's my intention.
Yeah.
So. Again, I'll know more. If you guys approve it and I sit down with Mr. Abrahams and all of a sudden he starts saying, he gives me a laundry list of things that's not readily accessible or that we can't give him based on this cost estimate, then I'll put the brakes on it and double check and see what's going on, so we don't end up with this $12,000 study growing into something that it was never planned to
That
be.
was my concern, yeah.
Yes, so,
So are you suggesting, sorry, Paul, are you suggesting that we wait on the vote, the motion and the vote, until we get more information, like from Pioneer? That Pioneer may be doing a greater task than what,
I don't believe, I mean, I sat down with Doug from Pioneer, and he brings up some great points, but I think for him to do everything he's talking about, it's not just $15,000, because he has $15,000 plus a $4,500 option one to do also.
right?
And I think, again, in my initial discussion with Mark and working with Matt with some of the betterment stuff he was doing for sewer, I feel comfortable that I can work with them. If you were to approve it tonight, my first step will be to set up a meeting with Mark and Matt, or one or the other, whoever's available, iron out how we're gonna move forward, and if something comes up at that point where it seems like what's in this proposal is not reflective of what the end result is gonna be, then I'll definitely, like I said, I'll slow down and have them come in front of you at that time.
All right, I would make a motion that we accept the Abrams bid of $12,000, Peter?
Yes, even,
And also with the option for our administrator to pull it if in fact he finds that something is not in the best interest of the Charlton Water and Sewer.
okay.
Second.
Any other discussion on that? Hearing none, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, unanimous again, Sue. Well, I can see that from our audience here that Mr. McClure from McClure Engineering has arrived. So if you would, please come up, Chris, and tell us what's going on with Carpenter Hill Road.
Great, good evening, Chris McClure, McClure Engineering. Everyone's doing good tonight.
Yes.
Ross, congratulations on the new position.
Thank you.
Condolences.
Yeah, I'm here just to discuss Carpenter Hill Road, where your gravity sewer currently exists. There's a couple of sinkholes that are directly in line with the sewer main. I've talked with Peter and also had discussions with Jerry Foskett about potential remedies or investigative activities that I feel should occur there. Obviously, I wanted to get on board with you folks, so I had a signed agreement in order to assist in that evaluation and also the appropriate remedy once we get a shovel on the ground up there to see what the issue is.
So the portion of the sewer line where the sinkholes are is the portion that was extended for Carl Storrs approximately 5 to 6 years ago.
It was completed in 2011, if I may.
So, okay, so
2011?
7.
2011, yes.
It was completed.
It was completed and activated in the
All right,
same.
so we're way out of the warranty
Yes,
parameters.
right.
And your findings are,
Well, there were clay dams, called Ripley dams, that were installed on that line due to the change in elevation, water lines, well, sewer lines specifically, water lines. Once we dig into an unconsolidated material like that exists throughout Charlton, and basically make it more porous, and then line it with stone, you tend to get water running down those lines. So part of what was designed in here, Mr. Elliott was the chair at the time, his recommendation in that area was to put these clay dams in, Ripley Dam, basically would have alleviate some of that velocity that builds up and stop the removal of some of the material there. The areas that we're seeing the sinkholes are right exactly in the areas where these dams were designed, installed. I'm thinking that there's also a relief pipe that was installed along this side road as well, that if that pipe did get blocked and we weren't getting that relief, the buildup of the water behind those dams will basically soften up that material. And with all the traffic that goes up and down that road is likely what's happening there. So we want to dig on the side of the road, see if those relief pipes are clogged up, and likely tie in those pipes to a drain in that swale that runs alongside of Copland Hill Road, and try to bring those into a catch basin, so this doesn't occur, this doesn't occur again. It's the two uppermost dams that the sinkholes are forming at.
If I got this correctly, in essence, when a sewer line is installed, that you line the trench, the lower part of the trench with stone, you put the pipe in and you add more stone.
Yes,
So in essence, as long as it's relatively level with a moderate pitch, what you're doing is you're putting in a French drain.
yes, yeah.
So what that stone medium is doing is it's taking whatever water is available and then it's running down the stone. So that was the purpose of the clay barrier, to stop it. And then the contractor ended up putting in a relief pipe, which went up above. So you're saying that it appears that two of these relief pipes either have been clogged, disturbed, or somehow, and so it wasn't a failure in the original construction. What it was somehow these pipes either disturbed, or got blocked by animals or whatever, causing the buildup or the pocketing of water,
Yes,
or definitely with no relief, then you end up with the sinkholes.
yeah.
So the first step we took, again, when the highway department came to us and said that these sinkholes are happening, and they're very specific and concise where they are. Talked to Chris, and he mentioned running a camera up the sewer line to make sure the sewer line wasn't compromised, causing the ground to erode. We got in touch with Violi, and they had their track camera. They were available to go out, I think, last Monday, and the sewer line is intact, and there isn't any problems with that. So
Okay.
the next step is to, like Chris said, Chris has done, he reviewed the as-built. He determined that the areas where the sinkholes are in the area of the clay dams that were installed. And Jerry's been working with us to say he'll work with us to go and do the digging and try and find those relief drains, so we don't have to hire an outside contractor and pay whatever, so. Luckily, it's a time when Jerry's not too busy. I saw him today, and he said they're available this week.
Yeah.
So Chris just, he forwarded the proposal that's in your packet for us, so that, again, we don't expect Chris to work for free, and to take us through this
So
process.
the proposal is for time and whatever material McClure Engineering has done?
Yeah, I use an estimate not to exceed. I have a general engineering agreement with the Water and Sewer Commission, but each time that I come with a scope, I need to have that signed. So we have the agreement that I can work for the commission. It's just these, any additional scope or any scope that comes
It's way up
forth
front,
to get approved.
Mr. Lemansky.
Yeah, okay.
It's in the front.
Yeah, like page 3.
Yeah, because he's our first appointment, so he's just after,
Yeah, he
he's
was right on time, at
just after the
7:45.
minutes.
Well, I'll make a motion to accept McClure Engineering's proposal of not to exceed cost estimate for $2,500.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any other discussion on it?
Naturally, if you do it this week, then you'll have information for our next meeting.
Sure,
We'll have good direction on it.
yeah.
Hearing none, I'll ask for a vote.
Okay,
Okay, you
just,
got some? Okay.
Included in the motion is, if it would be accepted by both Jen and Russ, is that we authorize our chairman to sign on behalf of the commission.
He has signatures for you guys. I'll pass it around, you folks can sign it, unless you want me to. Either way, I'll sign it if you're comfortable.
Whatever you want to do.
I'm more than comfortable having Peter sign it.
Fine. Okay. Well, I thought we'd have our,
I'm fine with including that in
The
the motion. I'll
superintendent.
second it.
okay.
Sure.
Great.
And who seconded it?
Jen?
Well, you
Jen.
seconded,
So
I
you-
seconded the
okay
first
with
one,
the-
and you, yeah,
You
so.
okay with the change?
Are you
then?
okay with the
Second
amendment?
Oh, yeah,
change?
that's fine.
it's our motion, so.
Just to keep it simple.
Okay, then, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous again.
Okay, if I could just, while I have you here on the spotlight, I just wanted to provide you an update on the water line design, I had reviewed and approved 100%, well, the design drawings, 98% design.
Which water
drawing.
line?
We're talking about the school loop. So I was told with this approval, they're just waiting for Southbridge DPW to sign off on it, and that line will go out to bid by June 18th. So,
If I may, Mr. Chairman? What was, is the piping through the two schools, is that still intact?
it is, there were some minor changes to the overall lengths. There were some lines that were run along the front of the school, but there was some issues with the turnover. They would basically just put in there at the request of the fire department in order to get a hydrant at, at the far ends of the school buildings, but based upon review of those and how much potential for those to create stagnant water or issues with the water quality, Southbridge and I had reviewed those, and it didn't appear to be necessary, so therefore, in an effort to prioritize the operation of the water system, those lines came out. It's not like the fire department couldn't run hoses to those areas, it's just we were trying to facilitate a request from the department at the time, and they didn't make the final cut, so. But as far as the orientation and the line lengths through the driveways and the access between the two schools, those all remain the same.
So when it leaves Heritage School, it'll go back out to Oxford Road at the far entrance exit, then come along Oxford Road, heading towards the corner of Morton Station, and then it turns into, is it convert there from Oxford Road to Mugget Hill?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Good enough.
Yeah, so we'll have the ability to manipulate the valves to create that flow of water that we've been discussing over the years.
Yes, so any flow that goes up to the center of town has to go through the schools.
Correct.
Yes.
So. And the pump station, you probably have heard that is, the work for the pump station is supposed to start, sometime early July 11th, after the week of the 4th is when they're gearing up to work down on 169. So we've had the pre-construction meeting for that, and that's that.
Okay, if we don't mind, just since we got you here on the water system, Chris, if there was a request for 25 or 30,000 gallons a day within the next 6 months to a year, would that be a problem fulfilling, knowing what we've got coming ahead?
No, I mean, that would obviously, any additional flow, and that's, we're below that threshold to get the Charlton tank on, but, that 250,000 gallon per day threshold
Yep,
to put that
yep.
tank on, any additional flow could, definitely be handled,
Yes.
by the system now. So I think any request should be considered in, really,
Yep.
I guess, how do you say, just
Encouraged?
encouraged, yes, yes.
Welcomed, yes.
Welcome. I'm sure we'll go from the gas to the brake,
Yeah.
so, okay, thanks for
Okay.
that information.
The current IMA is good to 500,000 gallons per day, correct? So that's not a limiting factor at this time.
Right.
And I believe the infrastructure that's in place is more than capable of delivering that, so.
I think the only thing that's a little weak right now is the Mass Ave pump, what's there right now.
Yes, yeah.
To where, sooner or later, that's gonna be
Right.
an issue, but with the new
That's gonna
pump
be
station
addressed.
coming online.
Yeah.
That's gonna be addressed.
Oh, yeah, yeah, no, that'll be
This
able
year.
to, that new pump station will be able to handle the 500,000 GPD without a problem, so. Good,
Okay, just one question,
Sure.
just going back to Carpenter Hill Road, what's the
Yes.
time frame for you to start your end of it?
my end's already started, it's just, we're waiting for, coordinate with Jerry, so I think that's gonna, depending upon the weather this week, if he's gotta get out plowing again, then, otherwise, he's saying that he'd like to get out there this week, we don't wanna get out there when, like today.
But I saw him this morning, he's available this week, so if you wanna reach out to him tomorrow.
Great.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks so much.
Night.
All right, next up, we have discussion of North Sturbridge Road, but only one of the, is the other party supposed to come here
I'll go look in the
tonight?
hallway. They're
But it's still a minute early.
It's all walking around.
Yeah.
Hold on.
I don't see anybody out there, so.
We can either go ahead with new business or,
Sure.
Yeah, 7 o'clock.
or start with one of the persons that's here, but probably better to wait for both. Well, the next two items on new business should be relatively quick. Payment to Southbridge for work completed on Route 20 pressure relief valve.
Yes. So as you're aware, to try and deal with the pressure fluctuations with the current water line that have been found from the water master plan and the design of the Kleinfelder and the school loop, the town of Southbridge has been trying to do work on the PRV pit in front of city power equipment. And over the last probably 6 to 12 months, they've been working with the valves that are there and adding new valves. And the paperwork is here, in the packet. They, part of the IMA says that they have to spend so much of their annual revenue on Charlton work. And because they've been working on the PRV pit so much, they've gone over the $16,000 that is allocated based on the IMA by $7,877, and they're looking for reimbursement for that amount. The backup documents, it's in the packet. If you want, I didn't bring copies of all the invoices, but there is a rundown of the invoices that were paid to Whitewater for the work on the PRV. And also the police details.
I think that was my question, and I'm looking for it in here. But on the police details, so they paid for those police details out of
Yes.
pocket? Typically, when we do work inside Charlton, don't we bill it out differently?
I think it's easier and cleaner for the contractor to just hire them themselves and pay the invoices, so that it's not
Okay.
going through two people. Otherwise, we have to get that police detail and then make sure we track it with the right job and pay it for the right amount.
Do we pay a different rate than
Yes,
the contractor?
we do.
Okay. What is, do you know the difference offhand? I can't remember.
So-
I know in past.
If a Charlton police officer's doing a detail and they're working for the town, they get paid overtime, because they're getting paid by the same employer.
That's the only-
So depending on which
I
officer
can't
it
hear
is,
you, Peter, I'm sorry. Can you?
sorry. Depending which officer it is, it determines what time and a half is. Any
Okay.
other, could be 66 to probably 68, $70
Or higher.
or higher. Any other contractor who hires them pays the flat detail rate of, I don't know if it's up to $45, $46 per hour.
Okay,
Thanks.
so it's better they hire it themselves,
It's
cost-wise?
cost-wise, yes, and also just being able to track it in cleaner, so we're not tracking police details that we don't know what job they're associated with. It's all in one invoice, the work that was done, the cost of the police detail and everything. We're not getting a bill from the Charlton Police trying to tie that to whatever work was
Sure.
done at that time. So, yeah. And that way, we don't have to say, if they call for a detail, the PD doesn't have to call us and say, we approve to go do this detail for this, because you're gonna be paying for it. It takes us out of the equation until it shows up
Yeah,
on
and
the invoice.
I had the math backwards in
Oh.
mind, so that, I thought that it was a reverse situation where the town actually paid the lower rate, but with the
No.
overtime rate and everything, I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
So,
Mr. Chairman, through you, Peter, for the FY 18, it's the $16,000. Did we use that up last fiscal 17?
I don't know. I could ask for a rundown on that.
See if we have
Have leftover?
yeah, yes,
Again, this is coming from the meeting that we had with them,
yeah,
when we were talking about becoming consecutive
Right.
water, and this was brought up, so,
yeah.
I did not ask for
Okay,
that
all right.
question.
Forget my question. It's okay. I remember the meeting,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, we all know that everybody here for North Sturbridge Road?
Oh, unless
Okay.
somebody wants to make a
Hold on
motion to
one
say it.
second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's-
Yeah, yeah.
So we have water in in a line item, that there's 14,000 left in the water capital outlay account, that there's funding available to pay this,
Okay,
if you guys are
What
comfortable
was
with
this
it.
bill again, 7,000?
7,877.
$7,877.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, when is our proceeds due to the town of Charlton from their sales?
That's the next item.
Okay, so are we gonna do a setup on that?
No, they're gonna make a payment to keep it clean.
Okay, so just to keep the numbers
Yes,
square, all right, and
that's our next agenda item for FY 17. This payment is for work that happened in FY 18.
okay. Then I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to do a reimbursement for the expense overrun on the water side to the town of Southbridge for $7,877.
Second.
Any other discussion on that? Hearing none, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, unanimous, so. Okay, I think now we can turn our attention to North Sturbridge Road,
Excuse me for a second, okay?
and you're gonna excuse yourself? Okay,
I'm gonna do the same, Mr.
and you're gonna
Chairman.
do the same,
Thank you.
okay? All right, with those parties involved, please come up front and identify yourself, please. If you wanna come one at a time or come together, that's,
Good afternoon.
Good evening.
Good evening. Cliff Lee Nolan, Prime Property Developers.
Welcome.
Welcome.
I was invited, Peter said you were gonna have something on the agenda that had to do with my section of North Sturbridge Line sewer connection.
So, I'm Jen Fawn, oh, Mr. Chair. Can I-
go ahead,
since
you
I-
asked to put it on the agenda.
I asked to put it on the agenda basically because the North Sturbridge extension was discussed at a prior meeting. So in order to try and clear everything up, I wanted to see whereabouts we were at, what the commission wanted to do, and kind of where we need to go from here in order to get everything going smoothly. So that was my intent on bringing it up. I have no motion or anything like that, and I don't know where you want to take it from here.
Well, through the chair. If, I guess, from my point of view, if you'd like to discuss the situation naturally, we always can do so. I'm not clear as to the understanding is, were you invited this evening, or you wanted to come and discuss it yourself?
He
Is
was
that the-
invited.
Peter invited me.
Oh, okay. I'm unclear as to why Peter did, but.
Peter
Maybe you
put it
could-
on because it involves, the line involves him
Okay.
directly as well as some other people, so he invited them in case they had questions for us in regards to what we wanted to talk about, or if we had questions for them, is my understanding.
Okay. Well, I guess if you have any questions for us, we'd naturally try and answer those questions.
Well, I guess it'd be nice if I could maybe just get an update as to where the line stands right now. Either my portion of the line or the next portion that was just accepted by the town as a public extension, I believe. So I guess if I could just get an update how that affects my connection. Has it been pressure tested? Are they connected to my line? Is the manhole that was installed, is my line in that manhole? I haven't been invited to a meeting in about 10 years, so I'm getting a lot of my information through the TNG and from what I can read in the minutes, so.
Sure.
I haven't been here in, like I said, a little over 10 years now.
We've had requests to tie in the Lemansky portion of the line to the town, the sewer at the end of Freight House Road. And then we were under the impression that you thought that was your line because you paid for it originally, and therefore we couldn't tie into it. And our impression is, once you put a line in the road, it becomes town property. Now, I also understand that there were some contingencies required before the town would accept the line that haven't been met. And I also thought that most of those things that haven't been met are on the cross-country part of the thing, not the line where it's in the road. And I don't know exactly what all those are. You might not, I don't know. It's been a while now. It's
It
been,
has been a long time, but I did try to review as much as I could, and I did find a couple of, inconsistencies as to some of the reporting. It did say that there was 15 deficiencies on the line, and what I can recall is the 15 deficiencies were actually deficiencies on a plan. It was an as-built for the line that we submitted. So a lot of those deficiencies weren't really deficiencies with the line, they were deficiencies with the plan.
were these deficiencies on the part of the line that's in the road, or was it mostly on the cross-country part of the line?
My understanding is there's two major things that the engineers that reviewed it wanted to be done. They wanted two manholes, both with cleanouts and both with air pressure valve. Those are, my understanding is the main deficiencies that are of the line right now. As far as if it has affected our, the system in any way, it hasn't, because we've had no, it's been up and running since the very end of 2003. So it's been running without any problems, and I understand how, the town wants us to bring it up to specs so they can take it over, but there's been no cost sharing in this project, and there was supposed to be cost sharing. And last time I was here in front of the committee, when we left, it says right in the minutes that we're gonna hopefully get contacted, and we're gonna kind of work through some of these cost-sharing issues, so that maybe we could have some money to bring it fully up to compliance, so that you could take the line over. But without that really happening, and we haven't been contacted, I don't think I've got one correspondence in the last 10 years, besides a call from Peter, I think, at the very end of last year when the reports were coming up.
Just so you don't have to go too far back in your conversation, do you have a copy of what you're talking about in the minutes with you this evening?
It's the November 19th, 2007. And in the minutes there, it also says that a previous board, because we had discussions before this meeting here, that
What was that date, just for November?
November 19th, 2007.
Can you provide us with a copy of those?
I have them.
You have those?
I'll be opposite.
Okay.
I sent them.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome. Mr. Chair?
I haven't seen that, but that's.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, I'm sorry. This was, from, I don't know, a couple.
This is the November.
It's not the
19th.
minutes, it's just a notice in the Melanson Health, Melanson Health report?
Forensic
Forensic
audit.
audit, thank you.
Are you currently having a problem with your service?
No.
No, okay. So you're just coming this evening just to participate in the conversation and just,
I believe that there's been some news in the newspaper that our section of the line is considered an illegal sewer extension.
I-
And I think I'd like to clarify, because my opinion, based on what we've submitted way back when, over 10 years ago, is we submitted an application to do a sewer connection, not an extension. And we submitted the paperwork, which had the updated plans with the updated drawings of the manhole with the pressure relief valves and with the cleanouts, which is what they wanted us to do. And what a previous commission allowed us to do is to keep it a private line at our risk. If there's a problem with it, we would have to obviously fix it. It would not be turned over to the town, it would be our line, and we'd have to maintain it. No one would be able to connect to it, and that's why right now, sewer connection, my understanding is only one building can tie on to a sewer connection. And that's currently what we have right now. We've got two lines. One line goes to 191 City Depot, and one goes to, I think it's 190, maybe 5 City Depot. Two separate lines, two separate private sewer connections. We don't have a sewer extension, and as far as I'm concerned, it's not an illegal sewer extension. In the last 10 years, I've been paying my bills, my sewer bills. I've had no problems with the line, and I understand that there is some people that wanna tie onto it, they wanna make it a public sewer extension, and I understand that. But we spent an awful lot of money, and some of the people that wanna connect onto it were some of the people that agreed to pay part of this line that have never done any cost sharing, and I have a problem with that.
I fully can appreciate your position on this, and I hope you can appreciate mine. I'm new to the board, as you may or may not know. This is my second meeting. At my first meeting, subject of this line has come up, and we went back through the minutes from previous meetings. There has been votes already to accept this line and the line that you're talking about. So at that point in time in the last meeting, when it was discussed, we said there was no reason to go back and make another motion to accept any lines because they have already been accepted at this point in time by the commission in the past.
Yeah, you get a little
That was
confused
just-
and everything. You're talking about the portion that Lemansky did from what's called manhole number 1
Yep.
forward. That was what we accepted. And the question we have now is going from manhole number 1 to the manhole that's at the end of Freight House Road. And we want to connect into that. I think Ross will confirm that in a little while. But Mr. Leonin says that's his, and we can't do that. So I don't know, are you going to be looking, I think all of us in the commission believe that once it's in the road, it becomes town property, unless you have a special agreement in writing with the town and recorded probably at the courthouse. But if you would like us to get a ruling from the attorney, we asked Attorney Cosgrove for a ruling on that, and he kind of referred us to our own attorney, which is more to do with sewer and water, of Copeland and Page. I don't believe we've called Copeland and Page for an opinion yet, but we could do that and then find out if who owns the line that's in the road, you or the town. And that way, we're just looking to connect, not to your line, but you said there's two lines there, but to the other one.
Well, I know both of the lines that we installed are.
I know you installed them both, yeah,
Correct.
but you're using one.
Both are being used right now. They're both actively.
both
be-
are.
They're both actively being used.
Well, through the chair, if I might.
Yeah,
We're talking about both lines would be in the town road, the town-owned property, correct? Okay, so I wouldn't begin to understand how it would be possible a private citizen would be able to own something that's in a town road, unless the road, the fee of the road itself was owned by that individual prior to the road becoming a town road. For instance, if you were building a subdivision and you started off with a raw piece of property, now you installed a road with infrastructure to say National Grid, and you deeded out the electric trench to National Grid directly prior to acceptance of the road by the town. Then you met all the standards for acceptance. National Grid would own the fee of the roadway with the utility in it, not the town. But unless the town granted you personally a fee of the road, there's no way you could own the property under the road, even though you installed infrastructure there. I understand you paid for it, but it was to your benefit to install that. So, once you enter that direction, ultimately, upon completing a checklist, then that becomes town property.
I did look through the minutes somewhere, they said there wasn't really a precedent to, have a private citizen own a utility in the roadway. I don't know if there has been a precedent or not, but, it seems like everyone has an attorney, so we did, take the advice of an attorney, we did retain an attorney. And it's his opinion that if the town wanted to take that line, it would be called a taking, it would be the town doing a taking, either by eminent domain or some other way, and there would be compensation, there would be a certain procedure that would have to happen for that to go through.
Why would there have to be a procedure to go through if the attorney says, the town owns it, period?
If the town says that they own it, that would be a different story, but to this point, I don't think any attorney has said that you own what we installed in the roadway.
No, not to my knowledge either, but
And what
the
the
point is,
committee did say in the past is that they did allow us to keep it private at our own risk. That has been granted to us.
I'd have to say that anytime anyone would make investment of private money into public infrastructure for their good, it would also be for the good of the town. And what I would say is, let's just say for discussion that there was water that ran off the edge of the road into your driveway, and it continued to erode your driveway. Naturally, the town would say, sure, if you'd like to put in a curtain drain and take the water away from your driveway, no problem. It's going to benefit yourself. And if it's done in the right way, it will benefit the town. And this is what you need to do in order to do that, so that it benefits everyone. And that's infrastructure. I'd see this would be no different. And if we were to stop and say, okay, we understand that you invested money into infrastructure for yourself and the town, and now you're owed X number of dollars, well, anyone who made private betterments to the road in any fashion would now be coming before the highway board or this board and say, well, I improved the road, and, it helped my neighbors as well as myself, so now you owe me this much money as a town. And I think that would be the precedent that would be set if we were to go down the road in this fashion, not the other way. Do you understand what I'm saying, Paul?
Well, based on some of the decisions of past commissioners, we've gone forward to design plans showing a connection. We've done the application showing a connection, not an extension, all at our own cost. And for that it seems like now you want us to go in a different direction. It seems like we kind of wasted some of our time and money on a direction that is no longer the will of the commission.
well, times have changed too. There's perhaps different laws on the books now and different requirements by DEP and stuff like that. But Mr. Lemansky put the line in from manhole 1 up to 2 and 3, and he left laterals for all the abutters and expected that the town would own it when he was done, which we do, and that's what we approved last week to get used. And right now, we can't use that and tie into it because there's this one portion that's still in limbo. And we're trying to get that, that's the purpose for having it on the discussion tonight, to see, well, what can we do about it, and what do you think? And in a minute, we'll get Mr. Ross Lemansky's opinion, what he thinks, and then we'll try to make a decision, how the board is gonna move forward. And if we need a different attorney's opinion to back us up, I guess we'll have to spend the money on something to do that.
Paul, if I might, I think, Jen,
Go ahead.
you've presented this. What would you?
So I guess my questions stem from, since you brought up November 19th, 2007, and what was presented in the timeline report said that you wanted to keep your line private, and the board wants a public road portion brought up to tie-in bond specification, which is, I believe, where the 15 supposed deficiencies, discrepancies needed to come in. The new extension application by Mr. Lemansky to be put on hold and not sent to tie-in bond for review until after a meeting between Mr. Leonin and Mr. Lemansky. Did that meeting ever take place?
I'm not aware.
Okay. And then on June 2nd, 2008, there was some talk by Mr. Berthium that North Sturbridge Road was going to be paved soon and engineering is completed. At that point, Mr. Leonin has not brought his line into compliance. Drawings received for the new extension have not been reviewed by tie-in bond. So I think that a lot of this is stemming back from numerous years, and we're just trying to figure out, or in my eyes, what I'm trying to figure out is, where are we with the deficiencies that were presented by the tie-in bond report? And what questions do you have as to what were not deficiencies?
If you look at the minutes, not the thing that was on the 22-page report,
Okay,
it said that, about 6 lines down, it says, Mr. Leonin then made corrections and resubmitted plans, and we received an application in July to go out to DEP for the sewer extension, which is a connection. The board has not yet sent this out. So, in the minutes here, they had the board with the corrected deficiencies on the plan, with the drawings as required by the engineer to be resubmitted, and that was sent in July, and the minutes in November say that it was never submitted to DEP for review.
November 19th, 2007? Okay.
And then a couple lines past that, it says the previous board had told him, that's me, if he wanted to keep it private, he could, but he would be forever responsible for the upkeep. You can go on, but that's pretty much nuts and bolts of it.
Right. But would also have to bring it into compliance with a line, correct?
It would have to be brought into, my understanding is when they allowed me to do that, they were doing that because we didn't have the funds available. It was tens and tens of thousands of dollars to do this line. We did not have the money. We were very strapped. If there was cost sharing at the time, we would have easily had the funds available to do that. So at the time, my understanding is they allowed us to keep the line as it was, a private connection, and if there was anything that had to be repaired in the future, it would be on our dime to do it. And we were willing to accept that, and that's where we stand.
Okay. So the portion that's in the public road, though, do you consider that your line, or do you consider that public line?
That is our line, the whole line that was installed. And that was the whole part of the line that the previous commission allowed us to keep as a private connection.
So did you find anything, excuse me a minute, Jen, did you find anything in the minutes to verify what Mr. Leonin just said about the commission allowing him to keep it private?
It's in the what I handed him is copies of the minutes
Yeah.
from that day, so he's reading straight from it.
Okay. Go ahead, Jen.
So I guess your intention is to keep it private until, or if you have,
Excuse me, for 1 second.
that's fine. I don't have copies of the minutes, so I can't. I just need to know whereabouts we're at and what we need to do to rectify it. And we're not gonna be able to make a motion tonight, in my eyes, unless we.
Well, except I don't get
I don't see why we can't, and I don't, you know, we can go round and round on he said, she said.
Right.
If you get a clarification from the attorney, that would,
That's what I'm
we'll
thinking.
have to all abide by.
Well,
So, the only other thing that I want to mention is that there were bills that were sent out. There was invoices that went out for work performed, and they went with no response. The other parties that were in agreement at the time that we paid for the installation.
Okay. I don't think I have any more questions for right now.
Hey, Russ, you got more to add?
Well, I keep coming back to, and I've worked in towns all around. At one point in time, I think I had 30 different licenses in different towns, so I've done a lot of sewer infrastructure work. And getting back to the benefit, I understand it, to me, it sounds like there was an agreement between two private parties, not with the town, you had an understanding, whatever, it didn't go that way, or it did, that's between you guys. We have a pipe in the town roadway at this point in time. That pipe is town property today. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
I disagree.
Well, and that's understandable.
I mean, I'm not an attorney. I
Well,
don't think you,
nor
are you
nor
an
am I.
attorney?
Nor am I.
So
And-
we can't make those legal representations without a doubt.
Absolutely. And that's why I would welcome you, if you have a problem with that statement, then I would suggest that you get something from your attorney, and then he talks to the town and says, this is our position. Because we could go round and round on this forever. And bottom line, it's a private agreement between two parties that did work in a public road. And unless you presented me with something that specifically stated that the infrastructure was yours, specifically the fee in the road, then I can't reasonably make the determination that that is owned by you. From the street property line in being your private property, that's your property. That's not the town property. But the town roadway, that's a different story. And no one has the right to give you that for your property, other than the townspeople. And I don't know of situations where that has happened.
All I can say is I have an attorney that advised me. He's
Sure.
been kind of following the case, and he thinks that if there's a connection to our private line without our permission, it is a taking. And the taking would have to be, there's a process to do that. And it's my position, because it's our attorney's position, that it would be a taking if the town wants to use that line without our permission.
And I can respect and understand what you're saying, but again, I would say, it would be very hard for the town to be guilty of taking something that they already own. You can't own what's under the road.
I don't have a response, I'm
So-
sorry. It's not, I've already said what I think is
Sure.
correct, and I know you said what you
Yep.
think is correct, and we have opposing views.
Mhm.
We have opposing attorneys probably, and I think the attorney should probably work it out and see if there's, if there's a case that they can, come up, that this has come up before. If it's unprecedented, then I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yep, and I believe that's what courts are there for. Courts are there to decide disputes between parties when they can't make a reasonable decision themselves.
And it's not that we didn't want to make a reasonable decision. We never had the opportunity. We were never contacted by the commission or by anyone that had interest in tying onto that line.
So what would you like today?
I just want to make it known that I do not want the town to be attempting to tie onto that line without knowing that it will be a taking, that will be, the attorney will be representing me in that if there is a taking. That's my goal, to tell you that that's our position.
Okay, well,
So, and if you have anything that you want to propose to us, I'm only, me and my dad own prime property, we're the ones that
Yep.
put it in and paid for it.
sure.
So I'm only half the equation here. If you had something that you want to bring back I can talk to my dad about, and talk to our attorney about, I'd be happy to do that. If you have anything for us,
Well,
we'll,
Jen?
So, out of the deficiencies then, you had brought up about the air release and the cleanouts that were needed. Were those done or no, because you were under the impression that you were gonna keep it private?
they were not done.
Okay.
There was supposed to be two. One is gonna be on the easement, and one would be on town property.
So I guess a lot of the questions that were brought up in the report are something that we'd have to look at and get to the attorney in order to figure out exactly where we stand.
Well, and this is the section we're discussing right here on North Sturbridge Road. From Freight House Road to what is called manhole number 1. And then this goes to Mr. Leonen's building back here, this line. North Sturbridge Road.
I just need his reference
What's the date on this one? April
And you're
1st?
saying the only deficiency is an air release valve that has not been installed in that line? Jen?
2 manholes, 2 air release valves, 2 cleanouts.
2 cleanouts. Is there still a high point? There was mention of a high point, at one point.
I think that's where they thought it was supposed to be installed. or at
Okay.
the-
Cleanouts, isolation valves. There was some question about flow recalculation, so there's a lot of questions in the report, like you said, that you didn't believe were on your plan. They were on the original, but then not on the change, so,
They don't have the new plan in the office. The file is missing, the plan is
Okay.
missing, the application's missing.
is there a way to get a copy of that plan? Or,
So the lines in the street now are not working correctly. Is that what you're saying?
I did not say that.
Okay. So why are they deficient?
the report that came out said there were 15 deficiencies that needed to be corrected before they could be considered,
Before they could be accepted by the town, right?
right? So
So-
it's kind of a controversy because it's in the middle of the road. And so what I'm trying to do is figure out exactly who needs to do what in order to get this up to speed and to where it should be for all the parties involved.
So
Well-
just to clarify, it's not really in the middle of the road, I don't know if it makes a difference, but it's all the way on one side of the road.
Sure.
It's
Okay,
just on the
I
edge of the
apologize,
road,
yep.
just so. And there's plenty of room, if someone wanted to do their own line, put another line in there, they could do it. I mean, I don't know if that's an option or not, but if someone
What
wants
is-
to put a line in, they could put a line in, they wouldn't have to affect our line.
What is the problem with your line being used as town infrastructure at this point in time, in your estimation?
In my estimation, is there are, well, I don't know what Rob did in, as far as manhole number 1. I don't know anything about that. Apparently, there were some drawings, there was some comments, from his engineer that had to do with my engineer's drawing, and I was not privy to any of that. So I don't know what's there right now. I don't know what's in manhole number 1. Is my line in manhole number 1? Did they disturb my line? Is my
Both your
line?
lines, as far as to my knowledge,
line's
both of
in-
your lines are in number 1 and capped off. Did you come into the manhole with your line, or did you, I heard you went somewhere between, the Freight House Road and manhole number 1. I thought you joined in the middle there somewhere, even though the line continued to the manhole.
If my line is in manhole number 1, then,
It is, okay. Well,
if it is,
yeah.
I don't know if it is.
well, to my knowledge, both of your lines go into manhole number 1.
Okay, so that was disturbed without our permission or agreement.
I don't know if we know that for a fact. I mean, I think that's something that we're gonna need.
There's nothing we would have
Well-
done. I mean, I thought that's what you did, ran both your
When-
lines into
No,
manhole number 1.
when we installed it, we didn't install manholes. So that was, the major deficiency is they wanted 2 manholes. Those manholes are supposed to have pressure relief valves and cleanouts. So those are the real 2 deficiencies that are,
Well, who
that are
paid for
visible.
manhole number 1? I thought you had paid for that. No.
I have no manholes. All the manholes and the manholes that had to be raised and all that private money, that's, I know as much as I read in the paper and what I read in the minutes.
Okay.
Is this,
Well, let's, Ms.
Yes.
Lemansky, would you have anything to say about this?
Talk about manhole one?
Sure.
Yeah, two lines come to manhole one, they both capped, and as it stands right now, provided as cleanouts right now to benefit that line. If there
Okay.
is a clog in the,
And does your manhole start at number one as well, being capped also?
yep, the one that
So in other words-
comes from the, one heading west, down North Sturbridge Road is capped, and then the two lines that exit heading towards Freight House are capped.
So there's three capped lines in manhole number one,
Exactly.
and you're claiming that nobody got permission to put that third line in. Is that what you're claiming to?
The two lines.
No,
I've
the
got
two
two
were
lines that are
yours, I
capped in
thought.
the manhole. There was no manhole before, so,
Right, so he's saying they didn't have permission to put the
Correct.
manhole in and the line into it, correct?
correct.
Do you know, Ross, who put in that manhole number
we
one?
did.
You
We
did.
purchased it, met the town highway department specs as far as install, backfill, and then our engineer inspected it, and we were there doing it.
Okay. Well, I think as far as, before we speak to Ross and get his whole opinion of this whole thing, I would leave you with the thought that you're gonna call your attorney and see what rights he thinks you have, and I think we're gonna have to, from this end here, call our attorney as well and try to get some ruling on who owns the lines, period, not contingencies or deficiencies.
Who is your attorney? Who's the town?
Copeland and Page.
Okay, it's, if they wanna talk to my attorney, it's a Peter
I
Flynn.
don't know if the attorneys wanna talk to each other or not, you know?
I'd have a difference of opinion, Paul,
Okay, go ahead.
just for stating it to the record. I think that at this point in time, and being new to the board, there's so much back and forth on this street and this infrastructure. There's people who have been waiting for years to tie into this line. At our last meeting, we said, everybody's clear to go ahead, tie into that line. I don't think that any which way this goes, it's ever gonna end the discussion, because bottom line, it's an argument between two private parties, or many private parties. Many people feel like they have skin in the game here. No matter what direction we go in, someone's offended one way or another. I'd always present people to bring information to this board if they feel that there's some situation that they've been wronged in by the sewer department or whatever. Absolutely, bring it forth so we can discuss it, get on the agenda, and let's talk about it. I feel this is a clear-cut, easy case of infrastructure in the roadway. The line was accepted, it's being used. Were there deficiencies? Maybe there were, but
Which
at
line
this
was
point in
accepted?
time,
Well, I think the acceptance came when the town allowed you to hook up,
of course,
you know, and then use the line. At
Absolutely.
that point, they're saying, well, okay, you know, but I understand there are deficiencies that haven't been met. But you should, if the town thought you owned everything, they should never have let you connect. Once they did, I think that's giving acceptance to it.
if there's a deficiency, then by rule of that deficiency, naturally, what you would say is, that line can't be used at this point in time. So whomever's on the line, we need to shut the line down, and until the deficiencies are taken care of, that line can't be used. But that's not the case.
That wasn't the ruling of a previous committee, though. The previous committee said that we could use it at our own risk, and if it had issues, we would have to repair it, you know, at our expense, and we accepted that.
I completely
So-
understand, and, you know, just,
So your position, I understand your position, but it's not the position of the past commissioners that allowed us to do what we're doing,
well, in your opinion.
in the minutes too. It's not really my opinion.
But I don't want, this board to be spending the townspeople's money, researching, going back through, looking at whatever situation may be presented before this board, when we can in fact make a reasonable decision without spending a lot of time and money and never solving the problem. We're here to solve problems and make decisions. And that's what, honestly, I'm here to do, in my estimation. So, at this point in time, I feel that the line has already been, both sections of the line. One, simply by your use over the past X number of years. We're certainly not going back and saying, we're gonna shut your line down and fix whatever deficiencies supposedly there were as called out by an engineering report. It's been used, you haven't had any problems, or so you stated, and it's working. Where's the problem in now, the other citizens in the community being able to benefit from the line? That's on town property. That's where my confusion would come in. So,
I think it's, is it financially, the money that you've put in, is that part of it?
Part of it is that we spent money to move it towards going with a connection instead of an extension. We did drawings and stuff like that because we were going with the will of the past commission that said that they would allow private connection. So spending money on that direction and not being compensated, and now moving forward and having the town want us to upgrade it when it's working fine, so they can take it over for the benefit of people that didn't do any cost sharing originally, it does not sit very well with me.
Did the town charge you any betterment or privilege fee for hooking up to the sewer line?
I've got tie-in fees, I've got inspection fees, I don't know exactly what fee you're.
Well, this would be different than inspection fees.
I think I don't know if I have that, I'd have to maybe research and see what else I can have.
it would be multiple thousands, not hundreds.
I'm not
So,
sure.
I guess my recommendation would be to table this and hear from Mr. Lemansky for anything that he might have to say, and then from there we can,
All right, are you opposed to hiring an attorney to get a decision? I'm totally in agreement with Russ, we shouldn't have to do that and spend the town's money for it, because in my opinion, too, the town owns the lines, but we're trying to give some proof to, he's saying he owns it, we're saying we own it, and we're
Well,
looking for
let's hear it.
a third party that has authority and knowledge to make a decision like that.
I don't
Would you
have
like to
enough,
make a motion?
I don't have enough information until we speak to Mr. Lemansky to
Sure,
see if
yeah,
he has
the
anything.
other half of the story.
Right,
I mean, I don't have too much more to add, I mean, because I was responsible, well, I did the install from sewer manhole 1, this sewer manhole 3, as far as that goes.
You have customers now that would like to
Oh,
hook
gosh,
up?
yeah, absolutely, at least 2, they wanna hook up, they wanna.
Okay, and you can't do it because of this
Correct, because
unknown portion of
can't do any tie-in
ownership?
as far as that, so.
So what about reimbursement for when we put our line and we billed you and we didn't get paid?
Yeah, I can't answer that question, I'm sorry.
Again, this is, I guess this comes down to the private party issue that, and we can't get in the middle of your private discussion. I guess that Mr. Gagner's question of, did the town charge you a betterment fee is one of my bigger questions in all of this, because typically, the deals that I've seen happen in many towns are the private citizens bear the cost of the line themselves. The town does not charge them the betterment that typically would apply to the lot-by-lot cost. The neighbors associated with the project, they reap the benefit from the private person installing the line to their benefit. And this is pretty much the overall, as I see it, on the North Sturbridge Road setup. It's not just a two-person issue here. It's not yourself and just the gentleman who was going to tie into it for his personal use. There's also many other customers and those other stubs along the way, which is what Mr. Gagner was referring to. A young lady was here at our last meeting and said, "Oh, this is great, now I can tie in." And we said, "Yep, go down to the sewer department, pull your permit, and you can tie in."
Will they have to pay a betterment fee?
No. They
They
will
would not
have,
have to
they,
pay a betterment fee?
no, because that was not a town job, that was private.
So anyone that wants to
privately
tie
installed.
onto this line would tie in with no betterment fee paid to the town?
That's correct in my estimation. Naturally, they will have to pay their fees for the permits and the connection,
I'm
but
not
not the
sure.
betterment. No, there's, not that I know of. Are you aware of a betterment fee, Paul?
Well, yeah, give an example of Carl Storrs Company. Carl Storrs ran the sewer up Carpenter Hill Road to their building, and they bore the entire cost of that, which I think was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we did, since they bore the cost of the line, we did give them a break on their betterment fee, but they still paid one. And once that line was in the road, it became the town of Charlton's, not Carl Storrs' line.
Sure.
And
But-
they, you know, they got nothing out of it other than
The
the way they
neighbors-
use the sewer.
The neighbors who tied into that line did not pay,
I don't believe they would because,
to my knowledge,
they
right?
shouldn't pay the town because the town didn't bear the expense in the first place. Carl Storrs bared the expense, but still, they had to leave laterals to all these neighbors and butters.
And that's usually the deal that's struck with the applicant who's coming before the board or the town to put in a line that ultimately they need at the point in time so that they can continue doing business. They typically end up paying all of the expenses, unless they can get someone at the same point in time to go in with them. But that's a private deal, and the town doesn't want to get involved in the private deals because ultimately it ends in litigation and losing.
So I remember there was a letter that went out to all the potential tie-in customers on North Sturbridge Road. I think Rob sent it out, asking if they would be interested in tying on, and they said that there would be a betterment cost of no more than $5,600 if they want to tie on. So is that not accurate? They won't have to pay a
Well,
tie-in?
let's, Mr. Lemansky,
I can't answer
Can you speak to that question?
I don't see a letter, I don't know what, if it, what the dollar amount was or not. But I know that we have not collected anything from anyone, on any neighbor. I think there's 5 customers that could hook up. There's been no money
So do they have
collected
the
from any
right,
customer.
do they have the right to collect from a customer if they want to tie into that line?
I don't see how they could. I mean, at this point in time,
Did you know that they were trying to collect money from?
I'm sure
clients
that
to come?
initial agreements people send out all the time and try and get people to go in with them and bear the cost. But the situation doesn't always work out in the fashion in which it was originally intended to by the parties involved.
Is
And
it-
that's why, once it becomes in the town road, naturally, we can't say, all right, Jim, you can tie in, but Bob, you can't, and Sally, you can't, you didn't pay, you know, you still owe $50 on yours,
So-
and it starts a whole chain of events that naturally the town wouldn't be involved in, even a discussion like this.
So you saying that since the line has been accepted, the Lemansky's part of the line, they cannot charge a betterment fee to any of the end users?
Mr. Chair, if I may. So in the minutes.
Is that,
Well, just in the minutes that we just approved for May 7th, 2018, after I asked if there was going to be a betterment connection or privilege fee, and it was stated that by Mr. Gagner that this is a separate issue and has nothing to do with what we're approving. Mr. Jennings asked if this was an immediate situation, it's page 2. Immediate situation that couldn't wait until our next meeting for clarification on that issue. Mr. Wanderlin, the vote was done in October. The vote carries the representation of the Water and Sewer Commission, saying that someone comes down to the office for a connection fee, I can now give them a permit to connect. I asked if we needed to make a motion. Mr. Gagnon said I don't see a need to. And Mr. Jennings said he has provided all the information that's required. Checklist has been satisfied. So there is the possibility that there still could be a betterment connection or privilege fee. It was not something that was discussed at that time.
Yeah, usually the town does not connect the betterment fee if they didn't bear the expense in the first place. This motion that Jen is just referring to was just last week, right? So, and it was referring to the portion of line that Mr. Lemansky owns. And what we were trying to do, at least, is separate any problems with the line, this, that, or the other thing, or betterment fees, or financial stuff, separate that from the fact that the line itself was at one time made a motion, if it passes a pressure test, we will accept the line. and many pressure tests were done actually, and it passed them with flying colors, and that was all. So you get the line in the road and operating, so people could use it. Now, if there were betterment fees, this, that, and the other, that's a separate issue that we would bring up at a later date, but not to hold up the line being used by any other abutters on the road. And that was the hope, so we separated the two, from, as we would tonight with you, with these deficiencies that need to be corrected, and the ability for the town to use that line. But, you know, you're still not willing to let the town use that until we get a legal ruling that it belongs to the town. And, but that was what she was referring to, and I think this is where our stand is right now. And again, Ross, are you still gonna add something to it when,
I
after?
don't think I need that. I think you guys have kind of hit up on all the points.
Yeah.
Well,
So the line,
just,
there, the Lemansky is part of the line, it's been taken over by the town now.
Yes.
The town owns it.
Yes,
Can the Lemanskys still get a tie-in fee, or get not a tie-in fee, a betterment fee from the end users if they ask them for it?
I wouldn't see how they would be able
that's
to.
part of what we would discuss when it came up. You know, we
Okay,
didn't
so they
make
still-
that-
so you're
we
saying
didn't
they
make
still
that
could?
decision one way or the other at the last meeting. We just-
So he could put his line in,
Yeah.
people could tie into his line, he could get paid a betterment for his line. Is that,
I
you're
don't
saying they
know
could,
about
you're
that.
saying you're gonna hold that discussion to another
I
meeting?
don't know about that.
Okay.
All
I
said is
would-
the town is not gonna send a betterment fee.
I would not see how the town, this board, would not get a betterment fee. Whether Ms. Lemansky feels that he has been wronged in the situation, much as yourself, and wants to go after private citizens and agreements that have gone back and forth between private parties that are not known to this board, naturally, he's free to do so. So is you, so are you. I mean, that's your business, not related to this board. But as stated at the last meeting, to the lady who was in the audience, she can go and tie in at this point in time, or pull the paperwork to tie in. There's no discussion, we would have no position in our business to discuss Mr. Lemansky's place in that arrangement. It just doesn't exist.
So how could they even tie onto Lemansky's, line, or I guess it's a town line now, if it's
It
not
is a town
connected, it's
line.
not connected to the manhole?
Well, that was part of the vote in 2016. And again, I didn't vote on this subject matter myself, just read what the vote was at the last meeting. And that was upon passing the pressure test, then they were allowed to connect. That was what the motion was,
Was that
made by
rescinded
the
or
other
not
commission.
rescinded?
It was not rescinded, no. No. So, we had just stated that Mr. Lemansky met the conditions set forth by the board in 2016 in that vote, and at this point in time, everything had been satisfied. There was no vote taken at our last meeting about that subject matter. And does that
I'm just
answer the
really
last
confused
question that you had
how
asked me?
someone's gonna tie into his line, and it's gonna go through my line if it's not connected.
Well, I
Did you
think,
give them permission to tie onto our line? Does he have permission to tie into our line?
From what I understand, that line was accepted. They did everything that they needed to do,
Yeah.
accepted, that's it.
and
So you can't tell anyone that they can tie into their line, it doesn't tie into town sewer yet.
well,
That's why we're here
I think,
tonight.
I think that
But I
the,
think you're giving people false hope if we don't have, if you don't have our section of the line, and that's why I was really upset that I wasn't invited to any of these meetings over the last 10 years. We could have ironed this out 8 years ago. Instead, here we are 10 years later.
The meeting,
And you're telling people they can tie on to Rob Lemansky's section of the line, and it doesn't go anywhere.
I'm
Well,
one of the people
I-
that said they could tie in, but I didn't realize at the time that you were claiming ownership of the other. It's been in the road.
It's in the
been
notes,
there for
it's all,
15
it says
years.
it's a private
I just
line, we wanna
assumed
maintain a
it's
private
It's a
line.
public line.
It's right in the notes, it's right in all the
And I
minutes.
I
It's in the
completely,
22-page report that they just came out with.
I make a motion that we table the issue until we have some more information in regards to some of the deficiencies as well as where the lines stand. Whether that means seeking legal counsel, the advice of Mr. Steve because he might be a little bit more familiar with it, and he is not here today.
What is the motion that you wanted to do today?
I didn't have any motion,
Okay.
and that was made perfectly clear when I talked at the beginning.
Okay.
I wanted to find out exactly what's going on and what both parties had to say, so we can try and help make this the best possible solution for everyone involved.
I think too, Mr. Boyer might have something to add to this, since he was on the commission in 2003 when you hooked up.
I was having
Yeah,
one
Russ.
question. I know that, Mr. Leone has been mentioning a board vote back from what year was that, in November?
The one that
Yes. Yeah, what about those, wasn't there a vote, I can't get the date of it, it was when Mr. Elliott was the chairman, and he referenced that line about making it, since, referencing what you guys are referencing now, the fact that it is in the public way, and there was a vote on that, and I think the vote was unanimous by the board at that time.
Well, I didn't second the motion, and I don't think that, well, I'll present Mr. Gagnon with the opportunity to do so before we move on, and maybe I'll make a motion.
Well, let's say I don't second it. You make your motion, and if we like that one better, we can go back to Jen's. I'm not opposed to tabling it as Jen suggested, but on the other hand, that's not moving forward, you know, so if you have a motion in mind, since Jen's wasn't accepted, seconded rather, go ahead.
Well, I don't really have a motion in mind here, and I'll tell you why. At this point in time, I don't believe there's anything to make a motion on. We keep going round and round on this subject matter, and your commission, you guys have dealt with this issue for all the years that your meeting has been televised. I've been watching it at home, round and round and round. Nothing ever happens, and we keep going round and round. A lot of time, a lot of money has been already spent on this issue. I think we've gotten an opinion from our attorney on this line, and we've also crawled into numerous other places of, you know, investigating this engineering report, that engineering report. All the while, different people come, keep putting on the agenda, keeps getting discussed, and all the while, no one is benefiting from this line, being the private citizens along the road. And that's my main concern, is the people who have been waiting to tie into this line, they're able to do so. We told one of them at our last meeting they could. I still see no information at this point in time that would prevent that from happening. It's a town line, and both lines have been accepted at this point in time by votes in the past, and at this point in time, I don't see why these people couldn't connect. So I don't know what motion would have to be made. I guess I'd have to rely on maybe some of your past experiences to do this, but, you know, spending more time and money to discuss the subject matter further and have people read all the reports that have already led us nowhere, I think we're here to make a decision, and that's what we do in these seats, so.
Go ahead, Jen.
I would like to make a point of personal preference. I take offense to that comment. I've been on the board for 1 year, and I believe that we have made some progress. We have not made a lot. And so I just want to state that for the record. Thank you.
Okay, I think the thought is, if we do as Mr. Jennings says, and just tie in, would you be gonna sue the town for it or something like that? My question is, if you are, get that opinion right now, because you might change your mind when you hear what your attorney has to say.
Well, I'm gonna read you a letter from my attorney.
You know,
It was just an email to me. It said that, it says, his opinion, the private sewer line is owned and controlled by me. Any attempt to assert rights over it by the town would require a taking. That would require the town to have a public hearing, title exam, appraisal, and appropriation set aside to pay whatever rights they take from you.
Could we have a copy of that for the record?
I'll forward something to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, well, you still don't wanna table it for tonight.
Absolutely not. And I
Okay.
think this, like I say, this issue has gone round and round. What do you, in tabling this issue, let me ask you the question. Do we personally call the person who we said could tie into the line and say, okay, now there's been a problem, another problem, and, you know, now it's coming down to someone who claims that they have a right to the infrastructure that's in the town road. And when you say that statement, in the town roadway, unless the town specifically granted that to you, I don't see how it would be a private person's to do what they would want to do with, and not allow other people upstream to reap the same benefit. So that's
I mean, I
my
have a
personal
response,
feeling
but
on
you've
it.
already
And-
heard my response, so.
Yes.
And they do in minutes. Give us permission.
So did you make a motion?
I did not make any motion.
Okay,
I
so we're at a standstill.
I don't believe we're at a standstill. I think at the last meeting, Mr. Wanlin was here, and it was specifically stated that the young lady who was here was able to tie in. Is that not?
I believe we gave permission, but at that time, Mr. Leona hadn't come forward and said, wait a minute, this is my line. And I think that changes things to the fact that that point has to be clarified before we can continue with allowing people to tie in, even though we granted that to them.
If,
I totally agree with you, and as far as I'm concerned, a line in the road belongs to the town. But this is some new information has come up now with him saying, no, it doesn't. My understanding, for I've been on this board going on 12 years, and any line that was in the road, the town owned. But maybe somebody's wrong about that, or maybe there is the only condition I know of is, like you said, the town would have to give him special consideration in writing about his, being allowed to keep a private line in the town property. And usually when you give a special permission like that, it's done in such a manner that it's witnessed, it's notarized, and it's recorded at the Registry of Deeds courthouse to that effect. I don't believe any such permission has been given or done in that proper way.
Well, and that's specifically what I talk about when you're dealing with National Grid subjects or other utilities where they specifically own that fee. Now, if that were the case, the town would have had to have given you that fee of the road. In doing so, they would have had to given a payment of a gift tax to the federal and state government. And that's what happens in cases like with National Grid and Verizon, in private subdivisions. They actually pay a gift tax because they're giving that property for infrastructure. And it's assessed by the acre, and there's a certain fee. It would be a really complicated situation which the town would not participate, because it'd just get too complicated. And that's why, like I say, I think we can go round and round on this subject matter forever. Naturally, you have your opinion, I have mine.
well, I don't
Jen
think
has
it's
hers.
forever, I think you need to get a legal ruling. I mean, that seems like, I talked to my attorney, I have my opinion from my attorney. I think this was a fact-finding mission. I think we need to find the facts. To make a motion to tie in or allow someone to tie in when you don't know everything is the wrong decision. And telling someone in the last minute that they could tie in when you don't have all your ducks in a row, I think you made a mistake. And I think you should probably go back and tell them you have to rescind that until you find out all the facts.
Well, I don't think we do have our ducks out of row here. I think they are in a row. I think it's perfectly known that the line is perfectly fine. You've stated that yourself.
Have you
It's
read
working.
the articles on the TNG?
I wouldn't
There's
begin to
fi-
believe
there's files
everything that I
missing.
read in the paper.
There's all sorts of stuff
and I-
that I think is ridiculous.
Well-
So it's not like all the ducks are in a row. I mean, I disagree.
Well, let's start with the line. Is there a problem with the line?
I
Do
don't
you
know
have a
what
problem with the
What line are
line?
you talking about?
Well, the line that you're using, you're tied into that line, are you not?
Our line is working, yes.
Okay, so that's one of the lines that we're discussing right now. The other line has been reviewed by Mr. Wanlin, and an inspection company. There's no problem with that. So I don't know where the problem is that you're referring to. I guess
The-
that's
The
my
problem is you
problem.
told someone they could tie onto a line that's not active.
Well, the only reason why it's not active is because up until last meeting, to my knowledge, that Mr. Lemansky did not have the authority to tie into it until he passed the pressure test. And that was a vote taken on October 3rd, 2016. So I'm unaware as to why, maybe just, have you tied into that line as of yet?
No. I've not been given authority to by your office.
Really?
Yep.
I think the line is
Do you feel differently about that?
Yeah, well, no, what Ross said is correct, but we're talking two different portions of the line. We gave him authority to, you know, that the part that he installed was good and was allowed to be activated. But there's a portion between, where theirs end and the other, you know, that Mr. Leonin put in, and that's the question that now has come into question.
I think we had to wait until the minutes were approved until it was appropriate, is that?
the minutes, on October 3rd, 2016, motion by Mr. Bertheum to have a new pressure test done and witnessed by our town coordinator, and we also witnessed the town connection in the manhole upon a passing pressure test. The line would be active for our customers. Minutes of same day reflect the motion was seconded, that motion was made by Mr. Bertheum, seconded by Mr. Gagner. Motion passes with Chairman McKenzie as nay and Mr. Lemansky abstaining.
So that's the motion that I'm referring to when I say Mr. Lemansky had permission to tie into that line based off of that motion, not a motion made by us at our last meeting.
I think I disagree with your little technical stuff there. Mr. Lemansky had permission to have the portion of line that he installed accepted.
Right. With that pressure test.
But now we need to
Could-
the portion he
Could I see
didn't
that
install.
motion again, please?
Motion by Mr. Bertheum to have a new pressure test done and witnessed by our town coordinator, and we also witnessed with the town the connection in the manhole upon a passing pressure test.
Okay, let's stop right there. So upon passing a successful pressure test, the town would witness the connection inside the manhole, which is manhole number 1, which would then connect to the section of Mr. Leonin's line. That's what that motion refers to. No?
I didn't translate it that way. Did you expect it that way, Ross?
Once she read it again,
Well,
it said connection inside the manhole, because that's what we did the pressure test was
From
sewer
that
number
manhole.
1.
back, not
Yes,
not
correct.
to, not to
Not to
the
the manhole
manhole
of Freight House
zero,
Road, no service.
so to speak, the one,
Absolutely not.
yeah.
So,
So how can you connect? How
That
can you
portion
allow someone to
wasn't
connect?
That was
part
part of
of,
the motion, connect to the manhole.
that's
the
what the
pressure
motion.
testing.
I'm sorry, Paul. Can you say that again, please?
We got Freight House Road, we got manhole number 1.
Yep.
And then it goes to Lemansky's up to here and over to here.
Yep.
And the pressure test was from here to here,
Correct.
not from this portion that Mr. Leonin says he owns both of those. And this goes to his cross-country to his property. And this one right now, he said somebody else, I didn't realize anybody else was connected to it, but he said somebody else is connected to this. But the portion we gave Lemansky permission to accept and correct was from here to here,
That's correct.
because that's what he installed. Whether, I don't think any connections were made between these two lines here.
Well, that's what the motion gives him permission to do upon passing the successful pressure test, because there's nowhere else it could be referring to that he would connect, because there's no other point that he would be
Well, I
connecting to.
understand what you're saying. You're saying if we gave him permission to do this, if he didn't have permission to come here, what was the point?
Well, he has permission to tie into this.
Right.
At this point in time of the motion, this has already been accepted as being good by the town, by your board.
We expected, yeah, but now we're
Okay.
bringing up some condition that maybe
Oh.
we don't own it. I expected we own, I still think we own it. I don't have any question about that.
I'm in agreement with you 100%.
But Mr. Leona is bringing up the thing that, oh, no, you don't. And this is what we're trying to settle tonight.
And I can
Can I ask
understand that.
a question?
Absolutely.
Peter called me a couple times back in November, and I asked, I go, if there's any discussion about my line, I'd like to come in front of the board and say what I'm saying now and have my piece, and
Yep. and
I was not
totally understand.
invited.
Okay. And naturally, I wasn't on the commission then, and we can't speak for what Peter said to
Well,
you.
this was you just had the meeting was held what? When was the last
Seventh.
meeting?
Seventh.
Yeah.
And
Why can't anyone invite me to any of these meetings when I specifically said I'd like to be involved if they're talking about my section of the line?
I can understand and appreciate how you would moving
Can
forward.
anyone answer that?
Now I understand that. Naturally, being new, I wouldn't, and I can't speak for anything other than the last meeting myself.
On the agenda, it was to approve manhole 1, 2, 3, period. That's it.
But then the discussion of connecting to our line.
That's what was on the agenda, to approve those.
So then they did more than what was on the agenda, and they never contacted me, and then they voted to allow it without having me available to represent myself.
Jen?
From what I understand, the discussion was on North Sturbridge Road extension, so that is probably why they did not specifically reach out. Again, I cannot comment, but it is a public forum. You're welcome to come to any meeting. You don't have to be invited, but you are welcome to come to any meeting that you want. I do apologize that you feel that you were slighted, but it was North Sturbridge Road extension that we were specifically talking about because I had questions on North Sturbridge Road and was told that that was not what we were discussing, and so I did not bring them up at that time. Mr. Chair, can we take a quick recess, or can I have a quick
Well,
recess?
I'd like to just end this.
Sure.
but One way or the other here, so you want to say, Russ, or?
I don't mind taking a 2-minute recess if Mrs. Vaughn
Yes,
needs
please.
to excuse herself. In the meantime, I would like to just see the motion again, if I could, please.
Actually, it's in your, it's right here.
Page 2.
Is that the minute, last time you gave me the minutes of
The
that
actual
meeting.
day, I don't have
Yes,
those.
you don't have those tonight, okay. That's what I was looking for, I apologize.
Is this in our
Get you
packet?
some stuff. I'm gonna email you some stuff that he has that you don't,
Okay,
just so everybody's on the same page.
thank you.
But that's pretty much that motion.
That's the motion,
Yeah.
yes. Yep.
It's just cut and
Mhm.
paste it
I think last time you'd showed me just some of the minutes
from that
that,
day.
yep.
Where is that draft process?
It's the third page from the front.
I know you have it, but just
Yes,
in case.
all right, thank you.
I didn't, got more pages here.
This was the.
Motion October 3rd, 2016, I remember this, I remember here, yeah, okay. Be active
So
for
the
our
other
customers.
votes, on this, as I recall, in the minutes of October 3rd, 2016, it states, minutes of the October 3rd, 2016 reflect that the motion was seconded by Mr. Gagner. Motion passed with Chairman McKenzie as a nay,
Yeah.
and Mr. Lemansky abstained. That's 3 of the 5 board members. At that point in time, 2016, were you a member, Jen? It was Mr. Berthium,
Alex, Paul, Rob,
And
Alex,
Yes. That's who the third was.
The vote
So-
was-
If it passed, that's who the three were.
Did it say,
It passes.
It did say who said.
Chairman McKenzie as a nay, and Mr. Lemansky abstained. So, Mr. Gagner, Mr. Berthium, and
it doesn't reference me up there.
I thought in the minutes, when did you come on the commission?
May of 2017.
May of 2017, okay. So then it had to be Joe. So, and I guess trying to go back and recreate the past here is my issue of this motion. It says the connection in the manhole upon passing a pressure test, which, in my estimation, would give Mr. Lemansky the right to tie in at that
I
point.
don't think any of us foresaw that we didn't own that line in the road. I mean, it's, in my history on this board, any line in the road is owned by the town.
Yep.
So all of a sudden tonight, or the last week or two, this is coming up, that somebody said you don't own that road. So that is, you know, why it didn't come up in the past. We didn't think there was any reason to bring it up in the past. I don't know, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, I don't see us going back in time and saying that, okay, there's deficiencies in the line, and now we have to shut the line down. I don't think that's,
No, I don't think anybody wants to do that. We can anyway, probably, you know, once the
No,
line's been accepted and
they've already
used.
ruled that we could keep it a private line under our own risk. That was like over 10 years ago. And I've had no notices from anyone on the board in at least 10 years.
But you only have an oral agreement from the previous board or something like that, right? You
It's
don't
in the
have
minutes.
anything in writing,
It's in the minutes.
it's in the minutes. I don't know how,
do you have,
know.
do you have anything in writing from them that you can present to us at this time that states that you specifically own that fee of the road and the infrastructure associated with such?
I have to talk to my attorney and see if he has anything that I don't think I have anything specific that says I have a fee interest in the road. That's what you're
Okay.
asking.
Yep, no,
no, I think we're getting nowhere tonight. I think we ought to take a break from it and perhaps we will discuss it with our attorney. He's supposed to, give his attorney's view in writing too, and take it from there. We're not, there's a disagreement between us parties, and you talk about disagreements, we've got one, and I think we need a third party to settle it. And if we go ahead and give permission to tie in the road, that we missed the owners. We have to do something about it, not us, but, I think it's a gray area here, Russ, that we just shouldn't, decide on ourselves tonight or anything, and not to let it drag on certainly, because we do have people waiting to tie in, so.
well, I can't, I couldn't begin to
We've got
understand.
two administrators on the board
How?
here. One of them was on vacation tonight, so we don't get his opinion, and he goes back a while. He may have a valid opinion, and Peter too, that didn't wanna give his opinion on record here until we get something settled. I think they're both thinking we'll settle it here tonight, but I don't think it's that easy to do. I think there's enough dissension here between us that we've gotta, as Jen says, probably just table it. Not forever, just, maybe till the next meeting, put it back on the agenda and see if by then we have something more concrete to say from either an attorney or ourselves or one of the two administrators that work for us here.
Well, naturally, I respect your position, Paul, on this board. You've certainly been a long time on this board. And, with any position, I also reserve my own right to disagree.
Sure.
And I understand that you're basing a lot of your decision in saying that at the point in time of the 2016 motion, you didn't have the information or questions you had at this point
Right, we
in time.
just assumed that the town owned the property. It never occurred to me anyhow, on that vote, that somebody's gonna come forward and say, hey, that's mine. But that's what's happened. And I don't think any of the other commissioners, even gave it a second thought that the town didn't own that line. Because that's the way it's done. You put something in the road and it belongs to the town. And now we have somebody challenging that and saying, well, he was given a special permission to keep it private, and I think we have to go back, check further minutes, not just the ones you guys have got right now, and see if there's anything to that effect, but without something being in writing and accepted by the town, I don't think, just because it's in some minutes often get misprinted too. You know, so I don't think that the minutes have any credibility. I think if you're gonna get permission from the town, it's in writing and done properly, and witnessed and all that stuff.
Well, and that's why I'd rely on your history on the board, and, you were you on the board at this point in time? When,
I came on
Leon
the
and
board
Ryan
in
was?
2007, so I was there for the
2007.
October 16th vote, and certainly I was there for the, we had another one here a couple of weeks ago for that one. But back in 2003 or 2005, where this dates back to where permission was apparently granted, that's before my time as well.
And that's why I asked Mr. Leonin if he had something specifically stating in writing that it was
Right.
granted to him. And naturally, that's a key piece of information, his contract with the town, saying that he would own the infrastructure and the road that he installed, so that he himself would be the only beneficiary of that.
That's why I kind of want to table it for tonight, so he has time to look up, see if he can find that information.
Well, isn't that by definition when you do a sewer connection instead of a sewer extension? If you do a sewer connection, it's for the benefit of one end user, and that is what we did. That is what we applied for, that's what was accepted. So a sewer connection can't be a sewer extension,
Well, as,
or can it?
to my knowledge, anytime it's on town property, you're not going to be able to do just, and I ran into a similar situation with the Grange Hall, and I'll tell you, years ago, I tried to tie in the Grange Hall. And I think my brother and a friend of ours took it on. The Grange really needed a connection, their sewer was bad, and they said, oh, we'll hook up the Grange for free. Well, now we got into the whole sewer extension issue and everything else, and across private property, it turned into an act of Congress. And basically, it came down to this very situation where ultimately, the town didn't want to be in the middle of a dispute between the private landowners, and they said, if it's on town property, we own it, and it's going to be the town's infrastructure, regardless of what happens, unless there's a special situation where that fee of the property is carved out, deeded, given all the rights associated with such to this person, and now moving forward, if anyone wants to do something in that fee of the roadway or that part of the infrastructure, the town doesn't have any rights to it, and all the rights were given away. That's a different story. And I personally don't see that here. I understand
It's a
that
little different
your
from our
position.
situation.
And naturally, Mr. Gagner and I appear to be on different sides of that, where he wants more information.
Well, I don't disagree with what you're saying, I totally agree. But
Okay.
the issue has come up tonight, to prove to somebody else that we're right about what we've learned to know over the years. And just kind of give them an opportunity to look up some of this information, get some of these notes where you've got permission from a town, and so that we could say, well, gee, okay, maybe you do, you know, I don't think so, and you don't think so, but Mr. Leonin does.
Well, what
and-
if, Russell, you went in front of the Water and Sewer Commission, you asked them to do something they don't usually do, because of special situations where you were supposed to have cost sharing and none was done, and the board allowed it, they allowed you to do a connection instead of an extension, it would be different. It would be
And
different from the
honest-
example. that you just
honestly,
said.
at certain points in time, sometimes boards do overstep their boundaries. And I ran into that exact situation in the line that I just talked about. And where overstepping those boundaries came into effect, DEP got involved and everything else because it was viewed as an extension of the sewer line. And I think at that point in time, what they told me is there are no private lines on town property. It can't exist. So,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to rescind my first motion and make another formal motion. I make a motion to table this discussion until we can get more information so we can better discuss the issue, to be no later than 1 month from this meeting today.
Do I have a second?
could I amend that motion?
Have that right? Yeah.
Can I, before you amend the motion, can I ask for something to be put into that motion? You put something in the motion, it says until we get further clarification, there'll be no tying on to our private sewer connection?
Well, to speak to the amended motion first, and just, I think, the way it works procedurally, I'll make that amended motion, then we'll discuss it, and naturally, you're here if you'd like to input into that, then we can. So I would like to amend the motion to not being 1 month, but 2 weeks. I don't want this to drag on further. So
Accepted. I second that motion.
let me just check that date. Do you have a, I'm sorry?
June 18th,
What's today?
4th, today's the 4th, so should be June 18th if it's not a holiday or anything else in there.
Is it Flag Day? Does that count?
I don't think, it's not a holiday. 2 weeks from today.
So, can you repeat your motion?
Jen?
No, it's yours.
Mine was just to make it 2 weeks instead of a month.
Okay, we got a motion on the floor and a second to table this for 2 weeks only till the next meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. So let us each, depart and try to get what we can for concrete information to substantiate each of our views. And we'll take it from there in 2 weeks.
I would like to deal with this issue very efficiently, and not have it linger on for all the parties involved, you as well. And if you can present us with any information that you have, so that we can review it, that would be great. And then naturally, we'd like to see you at the next meeting as well.
Sure. So how about what I suggested before, that apparently on the last meeting, you stated that people could start tying on to the line? I think that should probably not happen since the line is not connected.
Well,
It shouldn't be
as
connected
Ross said, he
until
hasn't
we-
been done anything yet because he hasn't been given permission. And so
They have to get permission
certainly
from this
this
board, I'm
2 weeks are
assuming.
gonna be an extension on that.
But right now, he can connect it.
I didn't say that. I said, he still really hasn't been given any more permission than when he came in to the meeting tonight. And then he stated that he doesn't have permission. So I don't wanna get involved with permission, who said what said, but, I mean, until he is formally granted that permission, I think everything's gonna have to be on hold for 2 weeks. I don't like it to be either, but I'm glad Russ made the motion to make it 2 weeks and not 4 weeks, for people involved that need to tie in. And hopefully you'll come up with something from your attorney, or we'll come up with something from other minutes and stuff that can kinda settle this issue for everybody.
Shall I
And,
call the boys
to
back?
add, Ross, no? Then, thank you for coming. Please come back in 2 weeks. And we'll invite the others to come back in.
And can I go on the record to be invited if there's any other further discussion on this?
Yeah, one of our administrators will, Sue can take that request and,
I think that naturally, you're aware of the next meeting. I'd consider it dangerous ground to be able to say, as a board, we're going to invite you personally every time the subject comes up. But naturally, if your property is specifically placed on the agenda, I would absolutely invite you. I don't think that anyone's property should be discussed in a public meeting without that person present. North Sturbridge Road coming up, there's different properties on North Sturbridge Road, and naturally, I think being reasonable, you wouldn't say, okay, we know you want to be in the discussion of that certain section of the line. And,
I think my section or the second section, I think they're kind of both of them.
okay,
Noted.
well,
Thank you.
yep.
Thank you.
This still needs one more signature. Let me see. Actually, we don't have Mr. Lemansky's signature on this one.
There it is.
Okay, well, we finished up, so you guys can go home now.
I want to sign it.
Sorry
So,
to
I'll
take
touch
so
on this
long,
one.
Peter,
No, that's okay.
and accomplish nothing. Oh, we didn't get any answers that we were looking for, so it's extended to the next meeting.
Next meeting? Okay.
Yeah, and we'll have to do some digging into paper files and stuff before
So-
that time, and as well as they will have to. I think we're at the Southbridge IMA payment for fiscal year 2017.
Yes.
We'll continue with that, please.
So I got an email from Heather Blakely the other day regarding the Southbridge IMA payment for fiscal year 2017, which was from July 1st, 2016 to June 30th, 2017. The entire package she sent over was over 30 pages with everything and all the documentation, but I probably put together about 6 pages that showed the fundamental parts of the IMA and what she used to calculate the payment. So Heather's been working with the town accountant in Southbridge and the tax collector in Charlton, so that anybody who owes back water payments gets turned over to Charlton, because we have the ability to lien the property, Southbridge does not. So if you look at how the FY17 payment was calculated, there's a table 1 that shows the water revenue that was collected for Charlton versus the total system. And from those two numbers, you take and come up with the percentage of what Charlton revenue was, and that came out to 8.88%. And then you take that 8.88% and multiply that times their water retained earnings, and that's where you get the payment that they start with. And that payment comes to $20,955.85. The Charlton water liens that are associated with FY17 are $3,230.74. So Southbridge is claiming the FY17 payment is $17,725.11. So, again, there's more, she sent probably 30 or 40 pages that shows all the invoices that were sent out for Charlton to show what they collected for revenue. But these few pages here pretty much show the crux of how it was calculating based on what's in our IMA with them.
Now, Mr. Chairman, so it's up to us to collect the $3,200 outstanding?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and then we will pass that on to the tax collector, and they will
Our
send
tax collector has all that information, and
Okay.
she's in the process of leaning the properties.
leaning and interest and all that.
Yes.
Did she say if it all looked to be collectible, or if there's some extenuating circumstances where we might not be able to collect it?
She hasn't said anything either
Okay.
way.
Like someone passing away, or
Oh, no.
sale of property? Or-
Either way, it's still attached. I don't believe any properties transferred hands where we won't be able to place the lien at this time.
Correct, no matter who
Yeah,
gets it.
okay, that's-
Yeah.
The CML will come up, so.
As I recall, when this was discussed in Southbridge, they have situations to where no one wants the land. So that's why,
Oh.
if they would attach it, that's why that was one of the biggest fears, is, we don't wanna increase that somewhere else, and I don't think that's a problem in our town, to where people would just walk away from property,
I think you're probably right.
to where a neighbor wouldn't pick it up, because this lien comes, you know, right with property taxes as far as what's due. So no matter who buys it,
Yes.
it's gonna get paid off. Okay, so the net is 17.7.
Yes.
You need anything else?
No, it's more just for information, because I know it kind of comes up every once in a while, so I just figured I'd put it as an agenda item so you could see if you want any of the other backup document, I can print that out and get it to you.
And complete streets,
Yes, Mr. Jennings asked for a couple of items to be placed on the agenda.
Okay.
The next two items were from him.
So, I think the first, complete streets and how it relates to water and sewer projects. I had discussed this with Peter. It was something that Alan Gordon was getting into during the planning board's, time, where the town would actually receive grant money for infrastructure repairs associated with putting in sidewalks and things like that. I don't know that much about the program, but when we're doing a water line or a sewer line down a road where we have potential to tie into other existing sidewalks, we may get grant money for the infrastructure improvements that will offset the cost of those repairs and projects. So when we install a water line down Old Worcester Road, let's say, we're already in the area of some sidewalks. Now, a certain portion of that money can be funded in another direction when the road's being ground from curb to curb. So, do you see where I'm going with this?
So where's the money of the funds coming from that we're applying for?
It's
this
called the
grant?
Complete Streets Program.
Okay, so it's a program out there, and if you're doing street work, this is to encourage sidewalks?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, so they offer, well, certainly, especially what we're doing, relative to areas that are in and around schools and things like that, it seems to make sense. Where's the applications go and things like that?
Well, I don't know that much about it. I just know that there is, or was, grant money available
Yeah.
in these certain situations. And this is why I had said, let's put it on the agenda and talk about it. Potentially, if we can get 1/3 of an existing roadway when it's being ground and repaved, if we can get 1/3 of that paid for elsewhere and not through our own pockets, and pick that up in infrastructure repair improvement projects, then it's a huge benefit.
who's sponsoring this, state or federal?
It's state.
I believe it's state.
Okay.
So the timing seems to work where it can overlap, where if we say, especially with the school loop being done and heading down Mugget Hill Road towards Bay Path, if there's a way for us to say, we're doing this work anyways, and we can add the sidewalks at that time, so it's not as invasive, you're not making a mess, because it's already a mess, and while these projects are happening, get this to overlap and have it done at the same time as part of the grant process.
Thanks, Joe.
It seems to be like a good fit, so I think it's a good idea, and I'll do some digging and try and find out some more particulars so that we can see how to get on the same page with whoever's facilitating the Complete Streets program to say this is what we have for areas where we're currently working. I believe Robin's worked with either the municipal building committee or somebody to identify or prioritize where the sidewalks or new sidewalks were proposed to go. But again, maybe alter that a little bit based on where our construction's taking place, and it'll be easier to install at that time. So, I'll follow up with that and try and get some more information for you guys to consider.
Great. And then water and sewer policies, authorized signers, how to handle requests to the water and sewer. I think this This stems from some of the documents that I've seen in my short time on the board, where their sewer and water department memos that are signed by someone else, or bills that are signed by someone else. And I think we discussed two of them at the last meeting. One was the Beta.
The original contract
Yes,
and the amendment.
where that wasn't, that was signed by, not by the board.
Correct.
And I think that was one of my questions, why was that document not signed by the board? It was signed by someone else. So,
Wasn't that signature approved by the board?
I don't know.
I believe
That's,
it was.
I think that's what we,
Usually we give someone approval to sign it, whether it's Peter or something like that, the board, you know, because of the timing and where the paper, where the paper's not in front of us when we're having a meeting. Especially when this comes in from Beta, and we give maybe conditions if, as long as it's not in excess of what we had agreed upon or something, then let superintendent sign it for us. I don't think it was ever, I don't think, Peter, you tell me, have you ever just signed anything without permission?
no,
No, this
Yeah,
no,
was,
I wasn't.
yeah, this was previous to me. This
Yeah.
was, I think, because the
Okay.
town administrator signed it. So,
That could be a different
I-
situation.
Yeah, I haven't signed anything on behalf of you guys without your approval.
Peter, Peter, I'm sorry, but Paul, I remember, that this was not voted on by the commission. Again, there may have been a consensus, but it was never a formal vote.
No, now you say what you said, I agree.
So,
I think that was, just my question when we signed the Beta agreement last time or discussed it. It was already signed at a previous point in time,
Yes.
and it was signed by the town administrator, and that's why I said, why is someone signing documents for the sewer and water department? I wasn't referring to Peter at all in that. Naturally, we're going to give our superintendent certain powers delegated by this board for him to do his job for us on a daily basis. That's different. But when some other department is signing stuff for us, that's when I say, why is that happening? And that was my question, giving you.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about, I totally agree with you, I don't think things should be signed other than approved by this commission. Not without our knowledge, certainly,
Yep.
you know, and that, I think that instance, that we weren't even aware of it, and it was already signed. So I don't think that's correct
And I think
to
that,
do.
I think that Peter, that was before your time, and part of Peter being on board now, he helps with things like that, and make sure that, that doesn't happen, which goes directly into, how to handle requests to the water and sewer. And when someone comes forth and asks Peter about something, or they say, I'd like this information from you, or, this needs to be signed. I think that was my follow-up question, so. And I think that, that could directly relate to, even tonight's subject matter that you guys recused yourselves from, not to get into that matter, but that's how things are placed on the agenda, and I think that goes through Paul,
Yes.
right, being the chairman. And that's, again, I apologize, some of these things I'm new to the board, so I'm asking these questions, so.
Okay, can we continue on here then? That was the only two you had, those two issues?
Those
Yeah,
were the two
and
points
you're
that,
probably well
Yep.
taken about the second one here.
Yep.
EPA Industrial Pretreatment Program training,
Yes.
Peter, you're going to school?
Well, it's not a school, it's a two-day seminar in Albany, New York, the EPA is putting on. It's, the next step after we get our headworks analysis done will be to create an IPP, Industrial Pretreatment Program, that allows us to uniformly require commercial and industrial businesses who are connected to sewer to be sampled, much like we do with the MTA, like we're doing with Treehouse now, and also Carl Storz at this time. So we've gone from just requiring MTA to now, and in the last 6 months, or the last year, Treehouse, and the last 6 months, Carl Storz has been also sampling. But there's also many other commercial and industrial users who should be doing the same thing, so that we can try and identify where the strength of our waste is coming from, whether it's Bay Path with their kitchen, whether it's McDonald's, whether it's, you know, CVS, or any commercial industrial user who's connected, should be held to the same standards. In our bylaws, we do have industrial pretreatment standards, but we don't have a program set up to actually allow us to require them to test and sample. This is a free training taking place. It's put on by the EPA. The only cost would be for the hotel for the one night between the Tuesday and Wednesday, if you guys approve me to go. I just wanted to put it out there and see what your thoughts were. If you think it's useful, I'll go. If you don't, and you want me to work with Veolia and create this anyways, based on what Veolia has for information, I can do it that way as well. And again, it's totally up to you guys. But I think this IPP program is a crucial step once our headworks analysis is done, so that we're fair and equitable to all commercial and industrial users, not just the 3 that are currently being tested.
I personally think that the more knowledge Peter has in making decisions to get us the correct information benefits this board in so many ways that.
You want to make it a motion, and we'll see if everybody agrees?
Sure. I would make a motion that we send Mr. Boyer to class and pay for the rooms plus the fees involved on June 26th and 27th.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Any other discussion on that? All those in favor, please say yes.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Okay. Oh, that's what I said. Peter, I guess you're going to Albany.
All right.
And now you have a request for a vacation.
Yes, so I still have 36 hours of vacation time to use by the end of the month. Right? So I was proposing the next 3 Thursdays and Fridays I take off. That way I won't kill a whole week. And we have a few things coming up in the next few weeks where I'll be able to get things going in the beginning of the week.
So June 26th and 7th aren't going to be vacation days, huh?
No.
Okay, anybody got some thoughts on that, or wanted to make a motion to approve Peter for this?
When's our next meeting?
The 19th. 18th, sorry, June 18th. I'll be here.
I'll make a
That's
motion.
A Tuesday,
Our next meeting is June 18th.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, which is a Monday.
Monday, and you're requesting vacation for Tuesday? one day,
Thursday.
or-
Thursdays and Fridays. So June 7th will be 8 hours for the Thursday. June 8th is a Friday, will be 4 hours. June 14th is 8 hours, Thursday. June 15th is a half-day, will be 4 hours. And then the following Thursday, June 21st, will be 8 hours. And Friday, June 22nd, will be 4 hours.
Okay, did I hear a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the proposed vacation request as listed.
Second.
I think Russ was first, Sue, in terms of the second. Any other discussion on Peter's vacation days? Oh, given none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye, unanimous.
Thank you.
All business, Buffin Public Water Supply, what can you tell us how that search is progressing?
So, we, again, we have amendment number 2 with Beta finalized, so that's signed and executed. So the funding is there. The finance director has signed off that there is still funding under the grant to be able to fund that. I am currently requesting an extension from Steve McCurdy from the DEP. As you're aware, that grant is supposed to be done on June 30th, the end of this fiscal year. So I forwarded him a copy of the amendment number 2. I forwarded him a copy of the timeline that's in your packet on the next page. So in talking with Beta, the project it has project start of June 1st. They're planning a drilling site walk on June 11th. And they're planning drilling to commence on June 18th, around that area. So I've reached out to the property owner to let him know what our time frame was, to just keep him involved and let him know what we're planning. So hopefully, luckily, The specialist that Beta has hired to take us through this process and work with them is available, and the well driller's available. They're in the area in the middle of June, so they're able to do the work. I'm hoping to hear back from DEP before they start to confirm that the grant is being extended. If not, we'll just have to talk to Beta and see if there's a way to invoice things differently by the end of the fiscal year, I guess. But, again, hopefully everything goes well and falls into place. I hear from DEP in the next couple weeks, and they say that they'll extend the grant. I think I asked for 4 to 6 months, and to be in time with this timeline. And, we should know, hopefully, by the end of the summer, if those wells are viable for further development. So again, this is just very rudimentary drilling, probably a 4-inch or a 6-inch test well down to bedrock. Do a short-term pump test, see what the well pumps for water, if it does. And from there, they'll do a report, submit that to DEP, and then we'll have to start talking about what needs to be done for long-term pump tests to truly develop those wells over the next 2, 3, 4 years and take them into production.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, Peter.
And I also reached out to the Army Corps of Engineers to see where they're at, because we need to have an access agreement signed with them again, because the previous ones have expired. So they're currently working on that. Tim Russell, who works in the Charlton Blufftonville office, is working with his real estate division to try and get those done as well. Luckily, if that's not done in time, we can still access this property from the property owner. They have frontage on Gale Road. We can ask him to access that way instead of having to go through Army Corps land.
Mr. Chairman, question, so the drilling is gonna commence, what's this, the 17th, 18th of June?
Yes.
Okay. Peter, how many exploratory holes are they gonna do?
I believe they're gonna do 2 larger ones to start, probably 4 to 6 inch, and that may be it to start. And
Okay,
again, that's just to see if, based on what's been drilled in that area before, it seems 60 to 80 feet to bedrock is pretty consistent, so it's just whether or not that well will produce water, depending on what type of material is there.
okay. And that drilling should go pretty quick. I mean, they're not drilling rock, they're
No,
drilling.
it's gravel. It
Hopefully
should be,
sand and
yes,
sugar sand, hopefully.
yes.
It should go quick. So this is,
Depending on how thickly wooded the area is and how hard it is to get to it, that should be the worst
okay,
part.
that's, okay, so that's no, that site work's not gonna start until the middle of June?
Well, again, the site walk is scheduled for June 11th.
Okay,
So I think that will determine, again, how aggressive they can do, I'm not sure how large if it's just a small track rig and how big it's gonna be, how wide they have to make
Yeah,
the
yeah,
path to get
okay.
there.
okay.
My guess is they know what type of earth they're going over, so they're not gonna bring some big machine in
And
to
they'll bring
drill
in
these
portable
wells.
electricity to run their pumps,
Yes,
obviously.
I'm sure.
Yeah, okay. Should go quick.
Hopefully, again, their timeframe is to be done by follow-up meeting in the middle of August, so.
And the chosen sites or locations of these wells,
Yes,
it's pretty much, that's where it's gotta go.
because of elevation to get us out of the floodplain, yes.
Okay,
Again, it's not a pin drop, but it's maybe one area is larger than the other. I'm gonna say 3 to, actually, I shouldn't even guess, but 1,000 square feet area. So,
Okay,
or
all right.
larger.
right, okay, so it's,
So it's, again, it's not,
this is where it's going.
yeah, we have a few spots where
Yeah.
the elevation's high enough, it alleviates a lot of the concerns and problems we had previously, so.
Sounds good.
Just hope there's water there, that's all.
Okay, and ExxonMobil's information meeting?
Yes, next Tuesday, June 12th, ExxonMobil is gonna be holding a informational meeting for the properties involved with the school loop. So it'll be Old Worcester Road, Morton Station Road, Mugget Hill Road. They sent out the postcard that's attached in your packet to all the abutters to that property line. It's gonna be held at the Dexter Dexter Hall and the library,
The library. What's the time on that?
6 to 8 PM.
And the superintendent report.
Okay. We had a pre-construction meeting on Monday, on May 14th, for the ExxonMobil Route 169 pump station project, tank mixers and the SCADA system. RH White will be performing the work, and they anticipate to begin construction the week after the 4th of July. So, there's a timeline attached for your review. It's not in color. We do have one, a larger scale in color in the office, if you want to stop by and see it. I believe I may have emailed it to you as well. If you want to open it up on your computer, you can probably see it a little better. But if you want a color copy, I can get that for you as well. The Berry Corner Road construction project, we also had their pre-construction meeting. It took place on last week, May 30th, Wednesday. Ludlow Construction was awarded the bid, and they will be installing that water line. They are proposing to install erosion control the week of June 11th and begin construction somewhere around the week of June 18th, or that the last week in June.
If I may?
Sure.
So Peter, this is the actual water line that's gonna go up the street and all
Yes.
that around, okay. And, what was the bid on that? Do you recall?
7.7 million?
Okay.
They had two bids, right? The first bid was thrown out for whatever reason.
Yes, they
This was the next lowest.
didn't calculate their numbers correctly,
Okay.
and they couldn't do the project for what they bid. So that one was thrown out, and this was the second lowest bidder.
Oh, okay, that was the, people out of Shrewsbury.
Yes, Polito.
So did they submit a second bid?
I don't believe they were allowed. They either had to stay with their initial bid, or they had to
Okay, yeah,
withdraw.
They have the opportunity to do it
for that price.
Yes, it was
And
either.
they,
Yeah.
they exercise their right not to.
Okay.
And, their completion date is when?
They plan to have substantial completion of the main line by the end of this year. They plan to begin doing laterals this year, finishing next spring.
They have,
Okay.
what,
So they won't be-
200 days or something?
They have 500 days till final completion.
Final completion, yeah.
200 days for substantial, 300 I think it was 200 for initial, 300 for substantial, and 500 for final, which is all residents actually connected to their homes.
So, best case scenario, and we're going to get the questions, I'm sure. And maybe it's something you can ask them directly, is best case scenario, what's the earliest some people may see water?
So, spring
Spring
of
is-
2019.
Is a safe bet.
So their plan is to install the main, maybe have a crew follow. They're gonna tap the main with the dry tap before they install it. So then they have a second crew follow and do the laterals to curb stops in the property line. So the road work should be done, hopefully, by the end of this season. Everything in the roadway will settle. They can come back in the spring, mess with the road, and then do all of the residential, all the actual service connections at that time. So be off the road, hopefully by the end of this construction season.
Peter, is this the same company that did the little itty bitty school loop over
I-
Burlingame Road?
I don't know who did that
Because I
project.
know when they did quite a few of the laterals, they did that called horizontal directional drilling.
Oh, really?
Right, so they didn't dig the road up, they just went under with a little mouse
Oh.
and did it that way.
I'm not sure if this is the same company. I can't imagine that would be there. Because the road's gonna be a mess anyways, because they're putting the main in. They're probably gonna just continue to use the hammer and whatever they have to do to trench the connections to the side, they'll do it then.
I know we had spoke about this, and I know there was, who exactly you were gonna contact, but we were trying to determine, as far as what portion of this money that hasn't been used out of the 10 million to where we have, or to where the state has told us that they're taking $1 million from funds that were part of a grant. So are they still taking the million based on the fact that they're only gonna be using 80% of the funds?
I believe Chris has reached out to Mary Jude, the DEP. She's been on vacation.
Okay.
One, about the construction oversight that you were questioning.
Yeah.
And also about this. So once we hear back from her and we have time to hopefully set up a meeting with her, I will let you know. And we can have that meeting to ask those questions.
All right,
I
because,
don't have an answer at this time. I asked that question to all the people who don't have the ability to answer it. So until we can get to DEP and ask them, I don't have an answer for you at this time, so.
so what is our plan starting June 18th for oversight?
At this time, Steve will be there for oversight. So the pre-construction meeting, Steve and I have been going to. The next one, I believe, might be, the initial construction meeting will be, I think it's June 25th or June 26th. I will be there, or Steve will be there. Right, so Steve will be there. Sue is on vacation that day, so we may have to close the office for an hour.
You're in Albany.
And I'm in Albany. So, again, that's part of the, we can talk more about the Albany trip as well. I'm not sure how that's all gonna work out, but, and the initial plan is Chris McClure is gonna be involved for not day-to-day oversight, because they have a resident engineer, just like the Kleinfelder job, who's gonna be there, watching the construction on behalf of Ty and Bond, Southbridge, and us, taking ties, making sure everything's done per design. Chris will be available to attend the construction meetings that take place weekly, bi-weekly, whatever the schedule is, whatever it turns out to be. And he will also be available to oversee or to approve any change orders or field changes that are requested from the contractor or from Ty and Bond. So none of that, no changes will take place without Chris saying yes. As far as day-to-day oversight, Steve is here. He's planning on checking out whatever jobs we have going on, probably on a daily basis, spot check whenever time is free, when different times every day, make the rounds, whether he goes to the pump station first, Berry Corner Road second, tank mixers, whatever's taking place, Steve will go ahead and make the rounds and do that. And also, the town of Southbridge is planning on doing spot checks on this as well, so they'll be dropping in daily, random basis to see what's going on.
So Kleinfelder is doing the full-time inspection
Ty and Bond,
of Ty and Bond.
yes.
Okay, have they been, has it been requested of them for them to turn over a weekly report to the town of Charlton as far as the inspector, as far as his daily logs go?
It has not.
Okay, I think we should be getting copied on those.
Okay, if there is a weekly report or just copies of any reports he produces?
Well, I think we should request the weekly report for sure, because otherwise it's just gonna be.
Gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know when they did 169, the fellow they had down there doing the inspection, used to be the water operator in Cherry Valley or somewhere in Leicester.
He works for Kleinfelder.
He works for Kleinfelder now. His notes were meticulous.
Okay.
And it'd be great if, in fact, he's on the job and just say, you know, at the end of the week, copy what you've got.
He's been on the St. Mary's Way job. He may be on the Kleinfelder job as far as the school loop goes.
Okay.
He won't, Ty and Bond has their own. He won't be on
So-
this job.
So Peter, you've met him,
Yes, I have,
Yeah.
actually.
very personable person,
Yep.
and again, like you said, his notes are meticulous.
So I'll make that request of their resident, of Ty and Bond and their resident
And
engineer.
I think the only piece of the puzzle left is, to see how we're gonna get reimbursed for Steve.
Yes.
And actually anytime anyone else from our department might spend down there, so, which is your,
Well, right, I
Question.
know the original was 200,000, then got knocked down to 20,000, which isn't gonna take us very far, when you consider a possible 500-day job.
superintendent's report.
The Burlingame Road Pump Station. At your April 23rd meeting, you approved $19,950 to rebuild the pump that we thought was bad. We thought it was the other pump that wasn't replaced back in 2017. Unfortunately, after they removed it, they realized it was the same pump that was rebuilt, but this time it's the electric motor that failed. So I have a copy, I attached the service quote from Associated Electromechanics where the initial charge to do what they were doing was just over $14,000. They're giving us a 50% credit due to the fact the pump had been repaired less than a year ago and for, I guess, loyalty in business, so. The cost to repair the pump will be $7,418. I discussed this with Paul, and we did give them the go-ahead to do it, because again, it's been out for a while, and rather than making it wait and only having one pump at that pump station, it was less than the original cost to repair, and it needed to be done, so.
Okay, so if I want to be clear on this, so the pump that they repaired was the pump that's gonna be repaired is the pump that they had repaired earlier.
They repaired the pump portion, and
We'll call that pump number one.
Okay.
So pump number two it still operates, and that pump hasn't been touched by anybody, and it's really holding the ship up here.
yes, it's 20
Okay.
years old,
Okay, all right.
approximately.
So, after they realize which one they're doing, the cost is $7,000.
Yes, because they're not rebuilding the pump, they're not doing the same work they did last year, they're rebuilding the motor for us.
Doing the other side of what they
Yeah.
did last year.
Yep.
And when do they expect to have that back in service?
I'll ask them and let them know. We did give them the go-ahead probably a week and a half ago, so it should be pretty soon. Or last week. And lastly, in my report, Veolia is working on the INI study. The GIS portion of that is done. The entire system is mapped or is plotted. Hopefully he will create the map. And we have 4 flow meters set up. One, I believe, at the end of South Sturbridge Road near Route 20, and 3 in the area of Carpenter Hill Road and Route 20 to pretty much delineate the system into 4 quadrants and analyze what the flow is based on a dry day versus after rain events. And those flow meters are planned to be installed for 6 to 8 weeks. Hopefully, not that we want a lot of rain, but the more heavy rain events we get to see. We haven't had a day where the plant's gone up to the flow of 1 million gallons per day since those have been installed. But hopefully we get 1 or 2 storms like that where we'll see the increase and be able to identify which quadrant is giving us the most infiltration or inflow.
Thank you. Was there any separation between Brookfield Road and City Depot Road? Or does that now flow to Power Station, and that's where
Yes. I believe it flows to power station, so that's still
Okay.
1 quadrant.
it's one quadrant, but one goes left and one goes right? I hear
Correct.
what
So
you're saying.
I think the one quadrant is Route 20 and 169 west.
Okay,
1 quadrant is Glen Echo. 1 quadrant is pretty much the school loop south. So
okay.
north of Route 20, south of Route 20.
And
The 4th quadrant's Carpenter Hill Road.
Stafford Street?
Stafford Street will be included in the lake at this time.
Okay, now
I
that sewer
believe.
crosses over, doesn't it? Over by Frankie Hammond's, and then goes down there?
Cross-country.
Goes
Right up
cross country.
against the Mass Pike.
That's, okay, that's the sewer, that's not water, that's sewer. Okay, all right, so you're getting it, okay. All right, good.
So,
And that section was looked at years ago for INI, and
it was.
Anybody,
I actually did a whole bunch of work up there years ago, because the manholes along the Mass Pike
Right,
were just taking water in right from the top.
yeah, and
So,
trees and everything else.
on
Sorry,
that cross
Bob,
country.
go ahead.
Jody worked on that last year. Any business unknown at the time of posting?
Nope.
Anybody get anything else for tonight?
Hold on. Okay, our next meeting is June 18th.
June 18th, in this room, 6:30 PM. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
We have a meeting, sorry, you are posted for June 12th for the ExxonMobil, if you guys are going to attend.
It's on my schedule, I plan on attending, so I don't know who else is.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.